Hello, Booktube. Hoping there's audio. I'm getting green dots. Is there audio? Or do we need to start this all over again a second time? I did a test and it seemed like people could hear me. And my green dots are moving. So here's hoping. Although, really, it's all in proportion because I'm thinking of William Compton, as one does. I'm thinking of William Compton, who, when he was a little boy, was a ward of King Henry VII. And King Henry VII thought, this is a good looking, clean limbed young boy. I will make him a companion to my second son, Prince Henry, the Duke of York. And so they were. William Compton was a couple of years older than young Henry, not much, just 2 or 3. So they got along just fine. They grew up together. For years and years, for 10 years after that, they grew up together with both Henry and William Compton assuming that, I don't know, that Henry had an older brother who was in perfect health. So I guess they were maybe assuming that Henry would go into the church. Maybe he would be archbishop or cardinal or something like that, that he would go into holy orders or uh, make an advantageous marriage in the continent. So the two of them just grew up together. And it seemed completely natural that when Henry got a household of his own, William Compton would go along. They were inseparable. They knew each other perfectly. And then Henry's brother died, and Henry became uh, the spotlight fell on him. Suddenly, he became the heir, and William Compton was right there along with it. Henry became king, married his brother's widow, kept court, was the glory of Christendom, as the publicists all said. Uh, a tall, slim-waisted, handsome, eloquent, multilingual, athletic prince. William Compton was one of his closest, dearest intimates. And Compton married for advantage, as courtiers always did. I doubt there was any affection in his first marriage, and it didn't go well, and it didn't end well, and then he married again. And I think there was probably more affection in that second marriage. Certainly there was a lot more advantage. And the whole time this was happening, little subterranean quavers of Henry's temper were showing themselves, but not much. He professed himself to be the happy husband, a besotted bridegroom, and a happy king, someone who wanted to be loved by his people, which is why he had two of his father's most onerous tax collectors summarily taken down when his reign started, because he wanted that goodwill gesture. Uh, and on the one hand, I have to wonder, what was William Compton's life like? What was his life like? He can't have had many clear-cut memories before he started living with Henry, spending every day with Henry, every hour, every minute with Henry. He can't have had many clear-cut memories before that. And by the time Henry achieved the ultimate power, by the time Henry became king, William Compton was practically a part of his body. No thought of loyalty tests, no thought of the shifting sands or whatnot. At least William Compton would have thought so. Uh, and so I think two things. I think a road splitting. On one fork of that road is what actually happened to William Compton, which is that he got something called the sweating sickness and died immediately. The sweating, we don't know exactly what the sweating sickness was, but it killed you pretty quick. Usually, it killed you pretty quick. If you lived through the first 12 hours, you were going to survive. But if you got it, you'd be dead in the first 12 hours if not. It wasn't like you were going to linger. It wasn't like even the Black Death, where it would be 2 or 3 days. It would be no time at all, a matter of hours. Uh, Probably, I would assume the medically oriented among you would say that means that that you were actually infected a long time before then. It was building a viral load. But William Compton got sweating sickness and died. But I always think about the other fork in that road, because he wasn't alone attending to young Prince Henry. He wasn't alone being a fixture in the household of the Duke of York. He wasn't alone going to the throne with someone he'd known his whole life. There were other people who did that. There was a courtier named Norris, for instance, who did that. And he did experience the shifting sands. It didn't matter how far back he went with Henry. He still lost his life. He was still killed in court politics, beheaded. So I don't know. I don't know why I'm thinking about William Compton today, but I was on and off from all of the days reading. It has been so mind-bogglingly cold all day, every day, all day, forever. It feels like a solid month since the daytime high temperature in Boston went above freezing. It is just a normal thing now for me to look at the weather for the next day, where it shows that, yeah, it's going to be down to 2 or 3 degrees Fahrenheit at night, but it will get all the way up to 15 degrees tomorrow in the middle of the day with sun bearing down on everything. It seems like forever that has been true. When all I want, in 12 years, I want to reach the age of 40, and I would like it if the temperature would reach 40 as well. That would be great. So today has really been good only for reading. For reading, all swathed and blanketed with my little bean. My little bean is right here. She doesn't want to be up on her windowsill because it's just too cold. It's just always going to be too cold. This is the coldest winter Boston's had in 45 years. So I haven't done much. I wrote a trade journal review just because those don't ever sleep. It's not a question of, the week starts up on Monday, and then on Monday morning at 9 in the morning, I can start to check my professional obligations. The trade journals have learned that I am the fastest gun east of the Pecos and that I am totally reliable. So those don't ever end. There's never a break from them. But other than that, no. Other than that, just reading. And I wonder what you've been doing on this Sunday. Probably where you live, it has been much warmer than it has been here. Probably that is the case. So I don't mean to be a greyhound or an old man and just sit here and complain, but it has been forever since I was comfortable in my own home. It has been forever since the cold outside was not actually dangerous, not just uncomfortable, but single digits. It has been forever since the temperature went above freezing, 32 degrees Fahrenheit in Boston. It wears on you. That's all. It wouldn't have worn on me 10 years ago at all. But this is not winter now. Winter now is 50 degree Fahrenheit. This winter in the Anthropocene is warm. So this feels like a throwback I didn't need. But anyway, that was really all I had to say. Was William Compton. Sort of the path not taken. What would have become of him? Would he have reached his late 40s right along with Henry? Utterly unbelieving that Henry would ever turn on him, only to have Henry turn on him? Brereton? Norris? These people thought that they knew Henry. They thought that he would never turn on them, even though they were warned. They thought, no matter what, if he won't turn on me. And he did. Would Compton have just been just another name along those lines? And I naturally wonder also just about the day-to-day experiences. What was his life like? I'm sure that he was fairly comfortable. I'm sure that Henry took care of people that he liked. But what about that last day? What was his last day like with sweating sickness? What was the point where, I imagine that the people who got it, if they weren't of a fatalistic turn of mind, were thinking, well, I know people who've had this and survived. Anne Boleyn and her father both got it and survived. Cardinal Wolsey got it and survived. So it was possible to do. Everybody must have known or known of people who got it and survived. So was William Compton the same way? We don't know anything about his personality. Was he thinking, I got this. This is definitely what it is, but I will stay away from my prince and I will live. I'll be better in a day or two. I don't know, and I've been thinking about it. But let's So I'm not sure that I have all night for the Stevestream tonight. Let's turn right away to the chat and see where we're going to do, what we're going to do with the bouncing beach ball of subject matters today, hoping that AI does not come up. So the first person out of the gate is Indy ATMN. You've been missed, sir. Well, that's very nice of you. Thank you. L Tell says, hi, Steve. To be more specific about my question regarding books on the Tudor time period from yesterday. Starting to feel a little like Fact Boy. I'm interested in the English Reformation, Martin Luther, Catherine of Aragon. Any recommendations for me? I strongly recommend The Reformation by Dermot McCullough. A great book. Just great. And it will lead you, its references and bibliography will lead you everywhere else that you want to go. But that's a fine book to start with. Jenny Parks is here. Jenny Sparks, yes, you're the spirit of the 20th century. Sorry, I'll have to watch this on rewatch. At the hospital with my little sister and waiting for her husband to get x-rays, which is taking forever. Placing your family's health above a Stevestream? Okay, whatever. Altel says, hey, Steve, hope you are well. Everybody says that. Everybody does. I want to stress for the people who say it in emails, it doesn't matter how emphatic you are about it. You can't be emphatic about a cliche. A cliche means you're not paying attention to what you're writing. It means, by definition, you don't care about what you're writing. So when you write the cliche, hope you're doing well, you can write it with as many exclamation points as you want. You're on autopilot. You don't hope anything of the kind. But anyway, what are your thoughts on the tariffs placed on Canada and Mexico, and also Trump's threats to take Greenland by force, or at least not ruling it out? Well, the tariffs are placed on American consumers. They're not placed on another country. Obviously, I know you know that, but it's just bad international will. It's bad international relationships. We are going to alienate free countries, and Trump is going to buddy up to the dictatorships. It's a total reversal of America's stance in the world stage, where our oldest, longest, and most reliable allies will see the back of our hand and regret it, and suddenly need to start thinking about things that they haven't needed to think about in a century, like border security against the United States, economic security against the United States. Bizarre. Brian Constantine says, Steve's back. I was going to have AI write a new Cormac McCarthy novel, and AI do Steve's video bashing it. I watched a video today. What was it? Well, I roam all over YouTube in the course of a day, and it was more than one video, but I watched one video where it was the whole thing was AI. The images were pulled from and assembled by AI. You could tell because they didn't always fit. The narrative was the script was written by AI, and especially the whole thing was narrated, but a human was not involved at all at any point in it. But anyway, Brian Constantine says, but wait, what if this is AI? Now, this isn't AI. The one thing that we will need to do from now on with Booktube, with YouTube, and unfortunately with Booktube, certain parts of Booktube, but especially YouTube, if you don't see a person talking to you in real time, the video you're watching is AI. Which is pretty weird. That's pretty hard as a standard, but that is definitely true. Sid says, hi, Steve. It was so wonderful to see you back. I missed the live stream yesterday, but waking up to that notification was the best thing that happened to me since I discovered tentacle fiction. Well, I'm no competitor for tentacle fiction. J. Scott Phillips, Steve is back. The reading public has not been so relieved since Holmes returned from Reichenbach Falls. Cecilia says, we can hear you now. Good. We hear you. Good. Excellent. Sid says, hey, Erasmus is also back. A different portrait. Same guy, different portrait. J. Scott Phillips, good heavens, is that a new Frazetta on the wall behind you? Yes, that is the Quentin Matisse portrait of Erasmus. Max says, I hereby promise I will not ask AI questions tonight. Next live stream, though. AKA JK says, Steve is back to rekindle our parasocial relationships. Yes, I am the only parasocial guru that you need. You don't need Joe Rogan or any of his guests. You don't need any of them. You just need me. Rodency says Eraserhead. No idea what that means. Matt Sheridan says, hi, Steve and Bean. Happy Sunday. And howdy to all my fellow Donahue acolytes. Yes, the Bean is, she's right here. She's right with me. But she doesn't want to be up on her shelf because it's freezing cold with snow predicted tonight. But I don't want to keep complaining about that. DZIGIN, Steve, do you like and recommend Dragonbone Chair Trilogy? If you're a fantasy addict, if you're a high fantasy addict, it will scratch your itch, definitely. It's incredibly overwritten, just amazingly so. In a bad sense. I shouldn't say amazingly, it's deplorably overwritten. But it is quintessential the rise of such and such in the Badlands of so and so in the east of somewhere else that'll be thwarted by so and so who says who me. It's quintessential that. So if that's the sort of thing you want, you'll get it in those books. Tolstoy 111, that pub sheet for the Henry Lean book was pure cringe. Is it fair to say that the Western literary tradition has experimented with form and theme more than any other? I will ignore the pub sheet and just deal with the book in time. DZGIN says, do you like Hypernaturals, comic by Dan Abnett? Never read it. Big Shep says, oh, good. I didn't miss this one. I wanted to ask, what's your favorite John Crowley book? Where do you think a good starting point would be? I know that it's very common, but Little Big is my favorite, and I think that Little Big would be a perfect place to start. DZGIN says, where should I start with Anne Rice? Interview with a Vampire. The Big Shep says, praise the little bean, because he's right here next to me. She doesn't want me to, I don't know if you can make out the detail. She doesn't want me to move my hand because my hand is pressed against her nose. And that it's warming her nose. So she doesn't want me to move that hand. Alex Hardy says, did you still watch BookTube while you were on break? No. Off the top of your head, who strikes you as some of the most well-read and widely read booktubers? Well, that's a pretty invidious thing to do, right? I have enemies on BookTube as it is. No one on BookTube likes me. So the last thing I want to do is start naming names. I think let's just say diplomatically that I think it's really easy to tell when someone knows what they're talking about, when someone is widely read. That is not at all a criticism of people who aren't. I don't know if you've noticed, but there are a whole bunch of BookTube channels, including a whole bunch of BookTube channels that started in the last half year, that are where the host of the channel, the BookTuber, is explicitly saying that they are a new reader, that they've only been reading for a month or a couple of months or a year or less than a year. I think, and that they don't make any pretense of being widely read or well read, and I think it's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. I love it. I love the implicit vulnerability. I love the honesty of it. I love the fact that those people have read the community they're entering accurately and know that they will not get abused for that. So it isn't necessary for anybody to be widely or well read. But I think you can. I think it's fairly easy to tell when a booktuber in question knows their subject. Fairly easy to tell, I would say. Is that diplomatic enough? If you've got a booktuber who has a combined on two channels 2 million subscribers, and maybe that booktuber has just revamped their library so you can see the books behind them in every video, and you see 500 books and they are all Lipton iced tea, dunk it just for a minute, new contemporary fiction, 130 pages, all but identical, hundreds of them, all but identical. Well, no matter the subscriber count, you're going to be able to guess fairly accurately that person has never read a critical biography, that person has never read a work of history and wouldn't want to, and maybe even be able to, that person probably has a very picky and choosy, very what's in it for me approach to canonical literature. I think it's easy to tell. In private face to face here at Hyde Cottage, I would love to pick the brains of almost anybody as to what kind of a feeling you get from the various spectrum of booktubers, because a lot of you must subscribe to lots of channels. So what do you do about that? That very question, what do you do about that? So when you turn on, I don't even know, this channel, let's leave this channel out. I think this channel might be a little freakish. If you turn on some other channel, do you automatically calibrate in your mind, all right, this person knows about X and Y, they don't know anything about Z, so I'm not going to hear about Z in this video or any other video. I'd love to know that. A little bit of a touchy subject. DZGIN says, where should I start with Ursula Le Guin? Doing a lot of starting, aren't you? Why don't you read something? But the chat jumped here. Let's go back to where you are. But where you start with Ursula Le Guin, you could start with Tombs of Atuan. If you want fantasy, you could start with The Lathe of Heaven is nice and short if you want science fiction, and then see if you like the way she behaves on the page before you move on to the two big masterpieces. James Holder says, I've been reading Full Metal Alchemist. Well, you're a big manga reader, aren't you? I thought. Rodency says, Steve, is Watchmen on the Mount Rushmore of great graphic novels / comics to you? Yes. Not just to me, to everybody. I know it may be a dicey question because you were only 1 or 2 at the time of issue. Well, one can read reprints. It's not just me, though. It's universally regarded as one of the greatest comic productions ever made. I have my complaints with it, but it's brilliant. Yeah, it's incredible. Although I'm not going to call it Mount Rushmore, because I think there's a really good chance by the end of this year Mount Rushmore is going to be defaced to include a rapist and a con man. Another rapist. That will make 3 rapists on Mount Rushmore. It's a little bit much to look at. So anyway, Nick Piccarilli says, does Frida mind going for walks in the cold? Oh my God, she does. Yes. I always tell her, you'd look adorable in a little doggy snowsuit and you'd be a lot more comfortable, but the answer is a flat no. Just a complete no. It's just been so freakishly cold for so long. Just anyway, Alan Cowley says John Skelton is another fascinating character associated with Henry VIII. Such interesting questions about what was really going on. Michael says, hello, Steve. You look well. I enjoyed your recent Steve Reads article on William T. Volman. That was a month ago. Will you please recommend a good entry point into this author's rather intimidating body of work? Well, first you have to decide whether you want fiction or nonfiction. If you want fiction, I would try. Well, you're going to have to reconcile yourself to long books. But the key is not going to be the page count. It's going to be whether or not you get along with the author on the page. So I'd try Europe Central. Probably the most accessible thing he ever did. Try that and start there. Matt Sheridan says, it's cold here in New York and my body aches. Currently reading the Norton Critical Edition of The Great Gatsby for class. I'm not going to. I'm not just going to keep returning to the cold, but I am sick of it. Even in a normal winter in New England, you have troughs of extreme bitter cold, single digits during the day, that are interspersed with the temperature going up into the 30s and 40s and then back down into troughs and then up again. A whole month of single digits is anyway. DZJN says Full Metal Alchemist is near perfect. J. Scott Phillips says, you mentioned once that the chimneys had been removed from Hyde Cottage. Why in the world? There's nothing like a cheery fire when it's so bloody cold outside. Well, the chimneys didn't work. They'd long since weren't functional. And that was the reason, because if you've got, they were running through the middle of the building from the basement all the way to the roof. And they were 100 years old and they weren't functional. No, there was no way they were going to be made functional. It would have cost, I don't even know, $30,000 to bring a specialist in and get all the flues, get everything made ready so that it actually worked as a fireplace. So instead, what you've got is just a crumbling stone structure in the middle of the building. That's a bad idea. They had to come out. It's just a fire, an actual fireplace would be wonderful right about now. Nothing heats the room like that. Certainly, the heating units in this building don't do anything against the windows everywhere that are 100 years old. No, nothing at all. Colo 1546 says, "Hi Steve, I'm glad you're back. Hello from England. Why, thank you. Must be awful late there." AKAJK says, "I've just finished volume 2 of War and Peace. So many twists and turns with Natasha's romances." Volume 2. Alan Colley says, I hate autocorrect John Skelton. Well, I got it. I got the point. Max says, "Today I've been doom scrolling and then reading a chunk of E.O. Wilson's Social Conquest of the Earth, which I like a lot. Now I'm listening between sets." Okay, but you shouldn't be doom scrolling. You should just eliminate that. You shouldn't be doom scrolling. Cosmic Gaze 1994 says, "What is your opinion of people who say Henry VIII was not an absolute monarch and consulted Parliament?" Well, they're right. I mean, Parliament had a lot more power with Henry VIII than people tend to think. A lot more power. Historians don't fall for that sort of thing. Henry was so good at acting the autocrat that if you just pay attention to the personal elements of his reign, you can sort of kind of think that he made the sun rise on the sunset, but he didn't. He didn't. Colin says, "Just finished Dark Sun by Richard Rhodes. Enjoy the making of the atom bomb much more. Need to read something more lighthearted." You want to sprinkle in a few subjects too for your sentences. But yes, if you read Dark Sun, you need to read something more lighthearted. Dylan McMahon, "Hey Steve, just hopped in. Currently working through your Western Canon starter kit. I'm on the Book of Ruth and Mood Machine by Liz Pelly. Enjoying both." Boy, nobody's writing subject matters. It's nominative predicate. You're not telegraphing in World War One. DZJN says, "Can you recommend something like Salem's Lot?" Oh, you're bouncing to Salem's Lot now. This is starting to feel a lot like Fact Boy. For those of you who are new to the channel, Fact Boy is the thing that I've been dealing with for 70 years, where the person is a person and I'm a person. We both have body temperatures and they're saying hi and they're saying, "How are you?" But really, what I am is a vending machine on the landing between two staircases. I'll pay a toll by saying, "Hey, how are you? How's it going?" But really, all I want is just what I paid for. Uh, but in answer to your question, in order for me to recommend something like Salem's Lot, I would have to know what about Salem's Lot you want it to be like. Rodency says, "Have you seen the videos of Better Than Food and Leaf by Leaf? How do you regard them?" I have seen their videos. Yes, I'm not a fan of either. AJK says, "Steve, which do you prefer, Seinfeld or Curb Your Enthusiasm?" I love both, but I'd say Seinfeld. Seinfeld, definitely. View from the Bar is here. "Welcome back. Wanted to share researching a book I dredged up. Margaret Leach's biography of McKinley. It's like a rice cake full of dopamine. Feels magical. What do you think of both of them?" I thought you had an encyclopedic recall of all of my videos. I have praised Margaret Leach's book on McKinley endless times on this channel. It is incredible. It is absolutely incredible. So I cannot recommend it strongly enough. Uh, uh, what do you mean by both of them, though? You want my opinion on McKinley too? I liked him. I voted for him. Critter Raw says, "OMG, thank goodness you are back." Yes, I am back. Sid says, "Steve, what are your thoughts on this Luigi Mangione case, especially how he's being lionized by vast swaths of the population?" I have lots of thoughts on the subject. Uh, I have lots of thoughts on the subject. The first time that I heard a Republican hack, a Trump cult member, the first time I heard a Trump cult member actually get on in front of a camera in America and say, "This is a man who's a husband. His kids are going to grow up without a father." I laughed out loud. The first time I heard that, I laughed out loud. Uh, I'm sorry if that makes me a psychopath or if that makes me heartless. Luigi Mangione plotted and planned to kill a monster. A monster. There is no rule anywhere in human existence that says if you have kids, you're retroactively exempted from being a monster. Monsters can have kids. Luigi Mangione shot down dead in the street a monster. He didn't do anything. It was always intended to be symbolic. It was never meant to grind the system to a halt. He never intended it to do that. He never intended to spark any other killings or to do any more killings himself. But he shot and killed a monster. So it's a little tough for me to condemn him. It's just a little tough. That has nothing to do with how dreamy he is. uh, uh, let's see here. Brett Sakari says, what are your thoughts on Richard Bork's Edmund Burke book? Bork's Burke. Do I know this? If it's an Edmund Burke book, I must have read it, but I'm terrible with author names. But then again, if it's an Edmund Burke book within the last 10 years, I would have written about it as well. I could consult Google to find out what I thought about it. It's not ringing a bell at the moment. Cosmic Gaze says, what is the biggest and best biography of Erasmus in your opinion? Well, the biggest one in terms of consecutive page count is not translated into English. So Steve has not read it yet. The biggest one before that, I think, was probably Preserve It Smith, who did a 2-volume thing. But Huizinga is probably the biography that you want. But the thing is, you don't want a biography. You are not interested in Erasmus. So you don't want a biography of him, good or otherwise. but Roland Baden also did a really good one on Erasmus. But you're not interested. So don't bother. Grandma Joe says, hi, Steve. Glad for everyone to talk about how cold it is where you are. Another day of 40°C here. I would take it. Definitely. We are going on to a solid month now where on the Fahrenheit scale, I am looking at the daytime temperature and saying, without any exaggeration, I would like it if the daytime temperature were 100 degrees higher than it's going to be. We're going on a solid month where I'm looking at that temperature and saying that. The daytime high today is going to be 8 degrees, and I wish it were going to be 108 degrees. 100-degree difference between what it is and what I want it to be. That's a pretty wide thing. That's the surface of Mars. Anti-Gaia says, Steve, when are people going to stop with the deport Elon meme? We all know that's not going to happen. At the beginning, I was willing to let a lot of those memes go because what are our words, even the Democratic side of the American political spectrum, the progressive side, the liberal side, whatever you want to call it, the non-fascist side was stunned and reeling. So at the beginning, for a couple of weeks there, I was willing to let any memes just go. You need whatever you can do to make yourself feel more comfortable. I don't know what I think about that whole wing of American politics not coming to grips with reality even now. We're in February now. Gestapo raids have taken place in a dozen U.S. cities, including Boston, where people are just taken because their skin color, or because the Gestapo agents heard them speaking Spanish. No paperwork, no warrants, no accountability. No one knows where those people are. No one knows if they're alive. No, nothing at all. Just they're gone. They just disappeared. And we're a week and a half past the administration spokespeople talking about a concentration camp at Guantanamo Bay. So the time for silly memes. Anyway, Colin says, any recommended books about Oliver Cromwell? It's a little dated, but I'm going to recommend Antonia Fraser. I'm going to recommend her big book on Cromwell. It's huge. It's a big undertaking, but it's an important life. There is one that's out this month in America. Came out, I think, a little late last year in the UK. But I'd recommend Antonia Fraser's. That's the one you're most likely to find at a used bookstore. Tolstoy 111 says, Robert Silverberg turned 90 a few weeks ago. We should note that. We should note it with a shudder. God help us. Oh, my. I mean, good God bless his friends, bless his family that he's still sharp as a tack and he's still around at age 90. Pray to all the gods that be that it not be me. Rodensy says, "What's your favorite television show of all time? Or do you mean as a kind of television show or a time period? You can't mean of all time. No way. Although of all time does have an answer." AKA JK says, "I thought I had a good January reading Death and the Penguin, Wuthering Heights, and 100 Years of Solitude, and Part of War and Peace, but you've read 120 books already. Steve is always best." No, no, I read 122 books in January. I'm well past that now. Thank you very much. Good Lord. Not that this is a race. It's not a contest. None of the videos that talk about the dark side of BookTube are right. None of them are. They're all wrong. I joke about this. You all know I'm a freak. I'm not saying anyone needs to keep pace. Uh, Trip says, "What are your thoughts on the Mavericks trading Luka?" I love it. I think it's great. Michael V says, "I remember somebody stating repeatedly that Boston would never see any real winter again." Well, can you blame me? We went all the way to almost the last day in November with daytime highs being in the 60s. That had never happened before, not just in record keeping, but in core samples going back to the Cretaceous period. That never happened anywhere near this part of the world in recorded history of the planet. So I think I was within my rights to think that. That's what makes this last month feel so personal and so vengeful, is that it's obvious that it's never going to happen again. It's just, it feels so anachronistic. Uh, anyway, Cosmic Gaze 1994 says, "Opinion of Martin Luther saying Erasmus was going to hell." Just put your coin in. What do you think my opinion of that is? What do you think my opinion of that? Well, Martin Luther says that Erasmus is going to hell. What do I think about that? uh, uh, Hannah's Books is welcome back. I'm so glad to be able to be here tonight. 3 cheers for Little Big. Oh, did you read Little Big? Max says, "Thoughts on Arthur C. Clarke?" Oh, I'm sensing a Fact Boy stream evolving here. Uh, of course, my thoughts on Arthur C. Clarke are not a Goodreads star rating, so they don't fit in a chat. They're my thoughts on Arthur C. Clarke, who I've been reading longer than your parents have been alive. So they're not a sentence. They're not a part of a sentence, and they don't fit in a chat. I largely like him. I don't think that does you any more good than it does me. But what more can I do? Uh, uh, Anti Gaia says, "Steve, what's your opinion thus far of Compton?" Oh my God. Okay. All right. Yeah, there's definitely a pattern forming here. Well, this wasn't going to be a long stream to start with. So, uh, what's my opinion of Colm Tobin, an author that I've met, an author that I've corresponded with, an author that I've read for 25 years? He's good. Tolstoy 111. Speaking of Silverberg, as a kid, I enjoyed Lord Valentine's Castle and have that Piers Anthony-esque fear to go back to it as an adult. Is it any good? It is good. Yeah, it is. All the Magic Horror books are good. Actually, Silverberg really holds up to rereading just in general. He really, really does. Um, J. Scott Phillips says, "Is there snow in your? If there's snow in your forecast, does that mean perhaps there is a blob on the horizon?" Well, it's going to be tough because I'm not allowed to move my hand. My Rabine is warming her nose against my hand, so I have to do all this with one hand. But there is a blob of snow coming here tonight. I think it's going to last just an hour or two. We'll get a dusting. Won't even be an inch. Yeah, yeah, there is a blob coming to the East Coast. Yeah, right on top of us. That's coming here later tonight, and you can see by the placement of all of those storms, those clouds, that you can see the river, the atmospheric river, right there. It's very obvious from where they're all located. That we could see a parade of storms here in the Northeast in the next 2 weeks. Uh, but yeah, that one. Can I zoom in on it with one hand? Yeah, that you can even see the word Boston. Uh, it's right on top of me, and that's not going anywhere. There's no way that's going to miss. So that'll be here tonight. Later, it'll snow overnight here. Uh, Michael Lombardo says, oh no, the chat jumped. All right, we were at Michael Lombardo. Let's see here. Oh my god, there's a lot of you here. Um, hang on just a second here. There we go. Just finished watching your STD March announcement. Coincidentally, Ollie's has the paperback of Sally Bedell Smith's QE2 biography. So do I. I chose Sarah Bradford from many. I have I don't even know, a dozen books on Queen Elizabeth II. Rodency says, what do you think of Robin Wall Kimmerer's work? I like it. The Big Shep says, I've been thinking about making a loosely book-related channel called Underread Shep or something like along those lines. Oh, don't beat yourself up, baby. You could be spending your typing time asking me what I think about the Bible. What do you think about the Bible? Thoughts on the Bible? AJK says, I'd like to sit back and watch the North American chaos from way over in England, but Elon and co are making it a little difficult. You are not safe. I've got a lot of that. I've got, in the last month, I've had a lot of people saying, another 4 years, God, which is annoying. And I've had a lot of friends of mine from overseas and a whole bunch of different places in the world saying, boy, you people are screwed, aren't you? And both are equally dumb and both are equally irritating. You are not safe. If well, last year I said if. Now it's happened. The most powerful country in the history of the world is now a fascist dictatorship. That means you're not safe, no matter where you are. Tariffs, don't even think that's the merest of starting points. You're under an American gun, no matter where you are. Anyway, must read more says, glad to see you, Steve. Do you have any reading plans for the Garb August wasted weekend? No. Anti-Guy says, also, Steve, what is your favorite Elvis song? It's good. Cosmic Gaze says, thoughts on John Winthrop? He's good. Rodency says, is The Monk by Matthew Gregory Lewis? Yeah, I know who wrote it. Thanks. A book that you enjoyed? I enjoyed it. Sure. I didn't love it. I don't fetishize it. I don't reread it. I would never conceive of rereading it. It's surprisingly fantastical and chaotic, especially as an early Gothic horror. It's a thing for schools. It's a thing for schoolrooms. I don't think I've met anyone in my life who actually read it and liked it, personally. Maybe you are that person. Dylan Matthias says, despite your distaste for philosophy, are there any writers of philosophy who you think wrote well? Any great novelists who wasted their talent on pondering? There are no great novelists who did that. No. Bad novelists who are called great because they did. In terms of writing well, I don't want to do something Weasley like say it depends on what we mean by philosophy, but let's just stop with it being a discrete discipline. So Kierkegaard, but nothing earlier than that. McIntyre is a fairly good prose style. It's also tortured, though. It doesn't. The discipline forces you to torture your prose. No, the answer is no. Michael says, "Is Wright Morris unjustly neglected or rightly forgotten?" He's good. Michael Lombardo says, Ollie's has paperbacks of Gilead and Home by Marilyn Robinson also. Oh, is this from? I didn't watch his video. I saw a thumbnail for it. Is this where he goes through all of his physical books? I should watch that. I will anyway, but I haven't done it yet. DZJN says, do you like Vampires by Carpenter? It's good. Matt Sheridan says, I've always wanted a fireplace. I've had them in a few places that I lived, and there's a tiny background skitter of wary, obviously, because you've got live fire in your living space. But if you're careful, and it doesn't take much work to be careful, oh my God, they're so wonderful. Just so wonderful. I've had them quite a few times where they were the only source of heat. And then they're not quite so wonderful because you're not going to keep banking a fire all night long. You're going to let it die down, which means that in the morning you're going to be very cold. And the fire is going to be dead. But I don't have one now. I doubt I'll ever have one again. Instead, I have a heating system that was installed by Larry, Moe, and Curly. So it does not do the job at all. Dylan says, all this talk of bitter cold in Florida, it's a miserable 82 degrees with 80% humidity. I'd take it, definitely. Brian Constantine says, I'm a big fan of One Piece, but consume it as anime as well over 1,200 volumes and counting. AJK says, Steve, which of the many translator Roberts is the king of translator Roberts? Fagels, Fitzgerald, Graves, someone else maybe? They're good. This orange couch, I finally started practicing writing book reviews thanks to you, Steve. So glad you're back. Tell me more. You're practicing writing book reviews? Tell me more. I ought to have practiced writing book reviews today. It would have been a good idea to do. I didn't do it. I was such a wimp because it was so cold that I didn't do it. Grammaticus books. Bad news. Puxatawny Phil saw his shadow today. 6 more weeks. Yeah. A groundhog is telling me the weather. That's bad news. Sure. Alex Hardy says, best and or favorite of biography of Elizabeth I, and do you recommend the one by Somerset? It's good. Dylan Mathias says, last night you mentioned cutting out all sources of news other than catching up by reading once a day. Is there a particular newspaper site you recommend for that purpose? You have to be extra careful. Even reading your sources, you have to be extra careful, or you are going to destroy yourself. This situation is not going to get better. It is just going to get worse. There are not going to be any midterm elections. There is not going to be a presidential election in 2028. There might be a sham one, but there won't be a real one where the Trump family can lose. There's going to be a Great Depression. There's going to be war. There's also going to be a massive pandemic, something that makes COVID-19 look like a picnic. All of this is going to happen, and you're going to have a hard enough time just getting through it without ripping yourself to pieces by studying news you can't affect. So my advice would be not only confine your reading of the news to half an hour a day, and literally don't look at it other than that, but also don't read the stories. Just look at the headlines. That's all. Just look at the headlines. Simplest, most painless way to do that would be on your device, so you're not tempted to really click on and open a story. Just go to the news Reddit subreddit. Just go to Reddit/news and just look at the headlines. That's taken from all over the place. It's very vigorously self-policed, so there's not a lot of junk there. And the junk is pounced on right away because it's Reddit. These guys are really smart. They're really bratty. So they love a good joke, but they don't want somebody lying to them. Just do that. Not anything, just news, not anything specific like aviation news or government news or U.S. news, just news. And just read the headlines and then stop. Stop reading it and go on to other things so that you're not ripping yourself to pieces. Alan says, yesterday you recommended getting your news once a day from written source. Do you have any recommendations? Same question. My answer is the same. Don't read the stories. Don't read the stories. Read the headlines so that you know the rough outline of what's happening. This is only going to get worse, a lot worse. So if it's already taking its toll on you now, you have to arrest that pattern yourself. Know what is going to do it for you. So just read the headlines at Reddit. That's all. Just read the headlines on Reddit, on the news heading for Reddit. Just scroll quickly through the headlines so that you know whether or not something major has happened, as me Saint and Ma used to say, so that you know whether or not they bombed Chicago. And you have the rough outline of what's going on. And other than that, no, you can't do anything about it. So, but anyway, Rasmus says, I passed by a little free library that said, do not put in garbage. Someone ignored that and put Ulysses in there anyway. So, Tolstoy 111 says, speaking of Parliament, were we? I find it amusing that Shakespeare all but ignores them in his history plays. It's all about monarchs and their rivals. Well, yeah, you're writing for an acting company. You're not going to deal with Parliament if you're writing for an acting company. Dylan says, I think Alan owes me a Coke. Manny says, Jim stream when? It's too cold to leave the house, much less go to the gym. DZGIN says, I like silent invasion theme, in this case by vampires. That's why I ask recommendations for something like Salem's Lot, the silent invasion theme. Well, you could try The Strain by Guillermo del Toro and Chuck Logan. That's a really, really good book. I don't know about the others, the sequels. The Strain is really, really good. Colin says, did you ever see the original 1954 Godzilla film? Not the cheesy American cut with Raymond Burr stitched in. No, I saw the Raymond Burr version. AKA says, Steve, which country's literature would you love to be able to read in the original? I'm going to guess you'll say Japanese since you love Genji. Yeah, it'd be Japanese. Definitely. Andrew says, I've read one positive review of Patrick McGilligan's forthcoming Woody Allen biography. Would you recommend any other McGilligan biographies? I'm not sure off the top of my head which ones he's written. His name's not ringing any bells. Max says, for literary journals, you recommended the NYRB. I wonder, though, if I'm not really interested in contemporary lit, but more interested in history, politics, and religion, would you still recommend it? No. If you're really interested in the nuts and bolts, not a surface book, but the nuts and bolts of history and politics and religion, then the TLS is the Times Literary Supplement is the thing to do. But the reason that I stress that, oh, my hand is free. The reason that I stress that is because most people hear me say that I think the TLS is the greatest literary journal in the English language and subscribe to it or want to subscribe to it without being interested in those things. The TLS specializes in that kind of stuff. Their table of contents is better than half nonfiction, serious nonfiction in every issue. So that's where your interests lie, then go there. Sid says, I also didn't feel bad about the CEO, and it's easy to understand where the kid was coming from, but isn't celebrating vigilante justice setting a really dangerous example? I'm very conflicted. What's the dangerous example here? First of all, it's not justice, because it was never meant to be justice. It was never meant to change the system. It was never meant to get Luigi Mangione or Luigi Mangioni's mother better health care. So what you really mean here is vigilante action. And the vigilante action was just to kill a monster. There are 200 monsters just like the guy that died. And for a little while, in the immediate wake of his death, the American public was calling for the on the sidewalk assassination of all of those monsters. Well, the world would be a better place if all of those monsters were assassinated. The world would certainly be a better place if the fear of assassination caused them to change the predatory habits of their companies. The world would certainly be a better place if that happened. Yeah, I'm not seeing the conflict myself. Maybe you're just more ethically developed than I am. That wouldn't take much. So maybe you are. Rodensy says, do you appreciate Nicolas Cage's acting? Never known him to do it. An actor often concerned more with presentation than naturalism, as Ethan Hawke said. SM3, thank you for reviewing Michael Palmer's new translation of the Commedia. Thanks to you, I read Dante for the first time at the age of 34. Good Lord. Harpo the Kid. Good to see Erasmus is back in the background. It's not the same Erasmus, but it is an Erasmus. It's a bigger Erasmus portrait. Bryce's 1000 heated throws and my battery powered Gillette are winter essentials for me. Good value according to Martin Lewis too. Wonderful to have you back. I don't know what a heated throw is. That sounds wonderful. I keep telling myself, I've been telling myself all through the month of January, you clearly need to take all sorts of steps here. You clearly need to get all sorts of heated blankets and a hot water bottle and all that sort of stuff. And then I remember, this is a freak. This is a fluke. Boston was 65 degrees until the end of November. When this fluke is over, Boston is going to go back to 65 degrees. And during the summer, it's going to be 165 degrees. So there's no reason. This is just the complaining is keeping me warm, but there's no reason for me to adapt anything here to this because this is not going to happen. This is just freakish. Let's see here. Max says vigilante justice. That's a bad example indeed. We shouldn't celebrate murderers. I would love to hear you say why. I'd love to hear you say why that is. If Well, of course, the examples that come to mind naturally for me at this point are serial killers. Naturally, the examples are serial killers. And if what's a good example? Uh, Unfortunately, thanks to my patron, thanks to the commission that I got, I've only really become conversant in gay serial killers, which really isn't much better than tentacle fiction. But let's pick an example like that. The most notorious one of all, John Wayne Gacy. Pick John Wayne Gacy. Uh, John Wayne Gacy. So John Wayne Gacy gets sentenced to 10 years in prison in Iowa for sodomy. And if he'd served that sentence, then we'd never heard from him again. He'd been an older, chastised man by the time he got out. But instead, he serves 18 months, fewer than 2 years, gets out of prison, and almost immediately launches into killing young men. And once he got his house, the infamous house, somebody will have. Once he got the infamous house where he was burying body after body after body in the crawl space underneath the house. Well, neighbors for a long time, they liked him. He threw big block parties. He was a big charismatic guy, generous with his time and with his money. His neighbors liked him, but they often heard weird sounds and cries and screams and violent noises from that house at odd hours of the night. What if right after he moved there, so one body in the crawl space, 15 more that aren't there yet? What if when there's one body in the crawl space and John Wayne Gacy's coming home, drives up his driveway, walks in his front door, one of his neighbors said, I was looking through the side window of the house and saw what you did. And here's what I'm going to do about it. I'm going to shoot you in the head 6 times. Well, that'd be vigilante justice. Are you really going to say that shouldn't be celebrated? I don't know. I wish I mean it happened and it's American news. I wish that I'd seen more intelligent commentary on it. But I haven't seen much intelligent commentary on it, on what it means. I've stopped watching pro-fascist mainstream media at all. I don't even dip in. I don't watch it at all. It's all pro-fascist, so I don't watch any of it. But I can just imagine. I saw enough reflections of it on social media to know the main thing people commented on is that no one disagreed with what this kid did. But I don't know what you say. It sets a very bad example. I don't know what that means. I really don't. No, I'm not being cute. I don't know what that means. We have all powerful, ironclad, billionaire oligarchs in control of every aspect of our life. They are not reachable by justice at all. An ex-president stole the most classified intelligence documents the United States has and sold them on the open market. That caused American intelligence agents in 4 different theaters of operation to die. Undercover operatives whose covers were blown and they died in the field. To say nothing of the vulnerability of the United States, it sold it for money. An absolutely drop-dead black letter law case. The boss wants the server deleted. He's never going to suffer anything. No accountability for that whatsoever. This guy, Brian Thompson, the CEO, he was on his way to a meeting where he was going to congratulate himself for 90 minutes. You say vigilante justice sets a bad example, but Brian Thompson can't do that anymore. He can't increase quotas for denial of service anymore. His successor might, but he personally can't do that anymore. Anyway, Dylan says these deportations have been horrifying. A poor girl in Lynn was detained over a family argument about a phone charger, especially upsetting how many friends and neighbors turned out to be fascists. Yeah, that's the thing that my Deb and I were commenting on 9 years ago. We were saying the worst thing about this is that it is showing us who the fascists were all around us all along. And we really didn't want to know that. One of the very first things that the Trump regime did was to encourage citizens to grass on each other, to inform on each other. And they did that because they know it'll work. But I don't look at the pro-fascist media, but I know that there hasn't been any case that I know of where when the Gestapo has been in some neighborhood and they have grabbed the two people they came there to get, and they say, hey, you're coming too. I don't know of an example where 30 people, white people nearby, stepped forward and said, no, they're not. You clearly didn't want them when you got here. You're not just scooping up brown people. We physically will stop you. You are not allowed to do that here. I know of no example where that has happened. But anyway, Damien says, I'm currently reading Russo-Ukrainian War by Serhii Plokhy, my first book on the topic. Can you recommend a title or two further broaden my knowledge of Russia-Ukraine history? No, I cannot. And the chat jumped. Ukraine made the chat jump. But history was the last word, right? So, oh my God, there are a lot of people here. Well, we'll get to everything. We'll get to all of the topics. Although is dreamy Luigi Mangione going to be the subject here instead of AI? Tolstoy 111 says, Steve, what are your thoughts about general things? I know. I can always count on you to sense the absurdity of what's going on here. I swear I'm not being a jerk. It's just these things are ridiculous. These broad, open-ended questions. What do you think about the Bible? Is ridiculous. Manny says, very important question. Which is your favorite Napoleonic marshal? He's good. Alex Hardy says, do you enjoy the books of Bernard Lewis? No. Jason Wisnick says, biographies are the best source of broad historical knowledge of authors. As authors, you need to be very clear and concise when providing required context. Do you agree or disagree? 300 words. You may go. All right, pencils down. No, I don't necessarily agree. There are plenty of biographies that are bad. Max says, why is asking a booktuber about an author fact boy? We're all here discussing books. I like Clark and wondered what your opinion about him was. My apologies. I didn't say it was fact boy. I said it was starting to feel that way. It was starting to feel that way. Like, put in your quarter and press the right combination of buttons. If you meant it sincerely, wonderful. It is not possible for me to give you a précis of my thoughts and reactions and estimations of Arthur C. Clarke in a live stream. That is not possible to do. I have been reading Arthur C. Clarke for a long time, 70 years. I have lots of thoughts on him. DZGIN says, if Hollywood was competent, who would you like to adapt King of Elfland's Daughter? I don't want Hollywood anywhere near. I don't believe that you say if Hollywood were competent. I don't believe that would ever happen. It'd be the Queen of Elfland's Daughter. I don't want Hollywood I don't want Hollywood to adapt anything. I don't want them anywhere near anything. Like we've often commented on this channel for years and years, for decades, the foremost dream, if you loved a book or a property of some kind, was wouldn't it be great if Hollywood adopted this, made a movie out of it? Now we dread it because we know what they'll do. I don't even like to think about the King of Elfland's Daughter in that way. AKA says, I watched an old video of yours on St. Aquinas Penguin Classic. Was it the Confessions or the Civitas Dei? And after you read a few pages, I had quickly agreed that it's not a lot of fun. I had my eyes rolling a lot. You have to be in the right mind frame for Aquinas or for Augustine. Although there is a rumor. I've heard a persistent rumor that there is a Norton critical City of God slowly worming its way through the pipeline. We will see. I doubt it. I doubt that it will happen. Cosmic A says, do publishers like Cambridge University Press and Oxford University Press really only exist to be purchased by libraries? It's a big, almost closed pipeline. It almost is. I won't say only that, but think about your own retail bookstore. Your own retail bookstore has almost no University Press books. And if you look at a catalog, like I just did, if you look at a catalog, the spring catalog for Princeton University Press, okay, there are 6 titles at the front. There's 6 titles at the top of the catalog that are general interest and are clearly being pushed that way. 1 or 2 of those might be in your retail bookstore in the spring, but none of the others. And all the rest of the catalog, where I was having a ball. No, they won't be in bookstores at all. Absolutely not. Which means you'll have to know about them and then you'll have to order them. So that is not relying on sales. No matter what else, it's not relying on sales. Uh, View from the Bar is back. We're far enough from it that I just want to say Luigi Mangione is exactly the sort of news item where I would not speak of it publicly till I'd heard you unpack it. Is that so? What kind of news story is that? I had oh my God, people came out of the woodwork to contact me when that happened. Out of the woodwork. I heard from probably 100 people, including a few people that I hadn't heard from in a long, long time. And on the underlying unspoken, only one person actually said it. All the other people, it was unspoken. Was, oh, he's one of your boys. He's exactly the kind of person you would have befriended. And all of a sudden, we'd have Martha's Vineyard Beach cottage get together for a weekend. Everybody's allowed to bring a guest. You'd bring a boy. You'd bring a boy like that. And we'd all like him, and everybody would talk to him until dawn every morning, and then the two of you would get back on the bus back to Boston, or take a chair here at Hyde Cottage. But I don't know. I don't know how much that's true, but I'd like to think that most of the young men, not I shouldn't call them boys, most of the young men who sat in that chair across from me, probably not been killers, but I honestly don't see that there's anything complex to unpack. I honestly don't. I I guess that makes me a barbarian. The Big Shep says, "Well, what do you think about the Bible?" It's good. Matt Sheridan says there was a video of the dead healthcare CEO talking to the camera, and my God, he has nothing behind those eyes. They're a pure psychopath. Well, it's easy to say that in retrospect. I myself agree. I've seen a couple of interviews of his. I've also seen lots of photos, and I've heard all the pundits, all the fascist pundits saying, this was a man, he was a husband, he was a father. Those kids are going to grow up without a father. Um, I agree. There was nothing there but money, uh, money and arrogance. This guy last year gave himself a bonus. It didn't need to be voted on. He gave himself a bonus. His bonus alone was 100 times as much money as most American families see in their whole working life. 1 year, one bonus that he just gave himself. Would have done the exact same thing the next year. I don't know. I guess Luigi Mangione is going to be the AI of this particular thing. Alex Hardy says, "Do you think it would be better if we went back to party bosses in smoke-filled rooms, picking their party's nominees, than leave it to the passionate know-nothings who make up party bases?" No, once upon a time, those back rooms were governed by money, yes, but also by ward politics, personal loyalties, uh, genuine civic mindedness towards your constituents, a whole mixture of things. Now they'd just be governed by money. So no, it's a moot point. We're never going back to either system, but I wouldn't want them back now because they wouldn't be the same. Manny says, "I read some more of War and Peace yesterday, and I find it hilarious how similar Tolstoy's depiction of Napoleon is to Frank McGlynn's in his great biography of Our Little Corsican." Gandhi says, is responding to Anti-Gaia. Indy says, "I've never met you in real life, and there are times when I disagree with you strongly. I just want to reiterate, boy, you were missed." Well, that's very nice of you, but it's a little very, I've heard that a lot, and I want to know what was missed. If there are times when you disagree with me strongly, all right, I admit that. Obviously, that's unavoidable, unless I were to be the kind of booktuber who does avoid that, right? There are booktubers, a lot of them the same as I do. You probably watch a lot of them the same as I do, who have deliberately non-confrontational channels. Their channels are bright and warm and rounded and funny. They're fun. They are not confrontational in any way. Now, I am lots of fun. I'm a barrel of friggin' monkeys. and, but I'm pretty opinionated. Uh, I won't even say that I don't suffer fools gladly. I actually have a fairly high tolerance for fools, but I'm not one of those channels. Definitely, I'm not a rounded off algorithm friendly channel. Uh, given that, why was oh boy was I missed? Why would that be true? Anyway, Columbia Thunder says, glad to have you back, Steve. As a Latino immigrant who is fortunate to get my citizenship, it's been very sad to see most of my peers afraid, but your videos are a great comfort. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Uh, since you're doing me the favor of complimenting me, I will not rub salt in the wound by telling you that I told you so. You should be out of this country. You should be long gone. It was before Joe Biden took office that I was telling people, emigrate from this country. But but you praised me. So AJ AKH says, Steve, I recently discovered Andrei Kirchhoff and found him really fun. What do you think of his books? Don't know him. Cosmic A says, as a non-driver, why do you think hardly anywhere in the America is walkable cities? Because of the fossil fuel industry. America's big too, but the fossil fuel industry bought the politicians that greenlit and underlit the massive interconnected road system. The fossil fuel industry has bought the city councils and the zoning boards that create non-walkable cities. That the fossil fuel industry has and the gun industry have a stranglehold here. Let's see here. Andy Gaia is responding to Gandhi. Tripp says, how long until Trump starts a military exercise on the Canadian border? He is learning his way right now. The parallels with Hitler in Nazi Germany are exact. They are absolutely precise except for proper names. And Hitler did the same thing. He had the same razor-thin, almost non-existent mandate, came into power in the exact same way, and then slowly, gradually realized that there isn't actually anything to stop him from doing anything. I don't know how long it will be, and I don't know whether it'll be military exercises or a manufactured crisis. The usual way with a dictator is manufacture a crisis so that you have to step in. Max King says, hello, Steve. Playing a video game when I was a nipper, Age of Empires, sparked a fascination with classical civilization. With that said, any upcoming books that strike you as intriguing? Those two things do not segue into each other. But lots and lots of forthcoming books strike me as intriguing. Not that it matters. I'm living in these New Yorker anthologies and not thinking about anything else. This is total. This and the poetry volume are just totally consuming me. But yeah, there's lots and lots of new stuff coming out that I want to read. Dylan McMahon says, you mentioning Silverberg reminds me, I went to Barnes & Noble and saw a Harlan Ellison anthology with a trigger warning on the front. Scared to see these become more common in publishing. I wouldn't know because I don't have a retail bookstore. Boston doesn't have a retail bookstore, but I'm sure that they are becoming more common. I just haven't seen them. Yeah, that is scary and sad and sickening, and also would have prompted Harlan Ellison to sue. Charlie Roberts says, I'm currently reading Rise and Fall of Third Reich, and it's terrifying how many parallels there are between this and current events. When I said this 6 years ago, people largely accused me of having Trump derangement syndrome. That's a surefire way to get me to stop the conversation now. But now it's completely unavoidable. It's just completely unavoidable. The parallels are exact except for the proper names. Dylan says, Boston is certainly quite a walkable city, at least by American standards. Yes, it is. One of the reasons I love it. There's also a fairly robust, though notoriously unreliable public transportation system in the city that makes it even more walkable. Yes, the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority, the MBTA, affectionately known as the T, has had its share of publicity disasters in the last few years. It was about 10 or 15 years ago that Boston had an apocalyptic winter. It wasn't like this January where it was just 4 degrees every day. Instead, it was a massive snowstorm, then freezing cold so the snow can't melt. Then a day later, 2 days later, another massive snowstorm, then another freeze. And that went on and on and on to the point where the snowbanks on the street here were 20 feet tall. There was nowhere for it to go. The traffic on the road was one lane and cars had to angle past each other. When I would take my girls out, for the brief walks that we could do, the sidewalk was a tiny little track. If we looked way up there and there was another dog walker, we had to figure out what we were going to do because you couldn't get them past each other. And during that winter, the MBTA broke down many, many times. And there was one time that made national news. There was a photo that made national news where the subway broke down in the middle of this howling blizzard. You could barely make out anything except the huddled forms of commuters being hustled off the train into the snow when you could barely see anything, just these dim, distant figures. I'm sure you could find that picture online. And then, what was it, 2 years ago? In the summer, an MBTA line caught fire. People on a bridge in full view. It wasn't in a tunnel. People had to jump off the train into the river. But yes, it is mostly reliable. I rely on it, and I have very, very few horror stories. Colombian Thunder says, oddly enough, I've been too down to write long pieces of prose, but poetry has been so rewarding to create these days. Oh, indeed. Is that so? It's nothing good, but they feel more fun these days, at least to me. That's the key. Well, that's interesting. I wonder why that is. Michael Lombardo says, no, at my local Ollie's bargain outlet, not the Criminality channel. Oh, okay. All right. Oh, an Ollie's. I wish I had an Ollie's to go to. J. Scott Phillips, I have 2 fireplaces here in South California, but we are continually restricted from using them due to airborne embers in recent years. Even when it's cold, it's just too dry everywhere. Yeah, I stayed in a place that had a fireplace a long time ago, and my dogs and my beagles and I, the fire, we'd get the fire going, and then we would bake in front of it, just bake like a potato on a skillet, to the point where after half an hour we had to pull open the sliding door and go out into the snow to cool off, and then you come back and bake some more. Dylan says, and Boston has those traits in large part because it was built from the ground up, unlike much later urban development, which was built from the top down. Right, famously. Cosmic A says, do you find it annoying when someone writes their memoir or autobiography in the third person? Yeah. Bargav Dave says, hi, Steve. I recently found a podcast where 2 microbiologists dive into the history of disease, some personal accounts of, and a bit of microbiology, and loved it. Can you point me towards something similar? No. Jonathan Matthews says, Steve, do you have any advice for coming up with plots for novels? Inspiration completely eludes me despite the thirst for writing being strong. Well, if the plots are giving you a problem, then don't concentrate on the plot. Write the rest of it. There's a lot of other stuff going on in any novel than plot. And see if a plot forms on its own. Like, what is there a scene that you know? Is there a scene that is clear in your mind? Write that scene and see what the next scene would be. And maybe a plot will develop on its own. Although we'll need a writing group as well, right? We need a writing group in this channel, a writing group where we are all working on stuff and can all pick each other's brains. AKA says, Steve, I watched your video about wanting a film review guy. Should I email you if I'm interested? No, you should not. All talk about film reviews on Open Letters is on hold. Street Medic says, how was your hibernation? It was good. Charlie says, also a question. I know in your canon starter kit you recommend reading Homer after the Bible and before Herodotus, but do you think there's any benefit to reading Herodotus before Homer? I wouldn't, but you're free to do what you want. Anti-Guy says, I like the Strain FX Series 2. That was awesome. I never actually got around to the series. I had a screener for it. Probably still do. But I never watched it. Matt Sheridan says, speaking of Godzilla -1 from 2023 was fantastic. Did I not say so? Did I not endlessly say so? I was taken aback at how enjoyable it was. Michael Lombardo says, Steve, have you made any new routines for yourself during your interim? A couple are on hold. A couple need a little more time for me to supplant them. I did a lot of new routine thinking, a lot of pattern breaking thinking, and that felt wonderful. But there are a couple of things I want to change. I just, you can't do it overnight, can't do it over the holidays. But yeah, there are a couple of things that I want to change. No, the major things stay the same. Must read more says, is anything by Charles Brockton Brown worth reading? No. I haven't heard many positive things about his writing. It's awful. It's awful. Read about him, sure. Read about his importance. Read about his people who read him, but reading him is torture. Uh, Dylan says, speaking of Japanese literature, has the format of the haiku ever been done well in English? They always strike me as cute little exercises, but I haven't appreciated them beyond that. Oh no, I've read many effective English translations of haiku and effective original haiku in English. Many. And of course, I just got those 2 old volumes on haiku, so it's been on my mind. AKA says, Steve, I've had a Kindle Paperwhite since last summer due to your championing of its e-readers. It's been life-changing. They are incredible. I still love physical books, but the Kindle is so easy to use. Yeah, the Kindle is just so easy to use. That's the ultimate thing, is that it's just so easy to use. Anti-Gaia says, Steve, did you see the videos of Canadians booing the U.S. national anthem? I did not. I read a headline that told me they did that. I don't need to watch the video. Aaron says, do you think Frida would ever consider wintering somewhere warm? Well, she'll go wherever I go. She isn't attached to any place except me. I just don't know where we would winter or how that would happen. Because she'd have to come with me, which means either somebody would have to drive me, or I would have to find. I think it's possible to take a small pet on Amtrak. Sometimes, under some conditions, on some runs. I don't really know. Maybe not. Cramerica Industries says, I'm glad to hear that it is new Erasmus. I couldn't have sworn he was facing the other way before hiatus. I thought I was losing my mind. No, it's a different portrait. A younger Erasmus and a different portrait, although the same attitude. Stephen Bronstein says, just watched Groundhog Day for the first time. Thought it was decent, clever idea that had its moments. DZJN says, I was thinking something spacey, McCarthy, Gaiman, maybe some of the conspiracies about celebrities are true. I don't know what you mean by that. AKA says, since you mentioned gay serial killers, any thoughts on the Friedkin film Cruising? It's a favorite of mine. Well, I'm talking about the real thing here, not films. So I haven't branched out. God help us. I don't know what would happen if I did. I don't know Cruising. The closest that I got, unless you mean, is Friedkin responsible for the Cruising that I know, the Al Pacino movie from 50 years ago? I don't know directors, but the one video representation that I did watch, I couldn't avoid it, was HBO's Monsters on Netflix. Netflix's Monsters about Jeffrey Dahmer, with Luke Evans as Jeffrey Dahmer. I couldn't avoid that, so of course I watched the whole thing, and it irritated the crap out of me. But there were parts of it that were very, very good. Monet Doyle is here. Hello, Steve. I got back from Maggiano's. My mother and niece had birthdays. That sounds like fun. Sid says, there's no way I'm more ethically developed than you, since you've guided me in countless moral dilemmas in the past. I had a feeling your take on this murder would be this way, by the way. Well, okay, I don't know whether that makes us both ethical monsters or not. But I don't view this as vigilante justice. Luigi Mangione was not a danger to anyone other than this one guy. Was not going to shoot anyone else. Was clearly in his right mind. Clearly knew what he was doing. I mean, people say, well, we shouldn't encourage vigilante justice. And then I think about 20 public figures in America right now who, if they were left to Luigi Mangione, I would cheer. I would go outside and cheer on the sidewalk. So anyway, let's see here. Sid says, I know how you feel about the death penalty. I agree there. Matt Sheridan says the CEO killed far more people than Luigi ever did. Well, that was a common line when all this first broke. It is factually true. It's just he didn't do it personally. He didn't do it viscerally. He didn't do it, pre-dawn on film. Anyway, Sid says maybe it's just the delivery of death without a proper trial that's making me uneasy. I can see how that can seem very naive. There would not have been a proper trial. A proper trial of what? Putting the healthcare CEO on trial for there was literally nothing that was going to happen to him other than what happened to him that would have brought anything that would have stopped or paused him in any way from the massive harm he was doing every day. There's literally nothing that would have stopped that. A medical emergency on his part, an aneurysm or heart attack, or what Luigi Mangione did, but nothing else. Absolutely nothing else. Let's see here. Adam Miller, Steve, longtime viewer, first time commenter. Goodness gracious. I just finished the Iliad and I'm planning on starting the Odyssey this year. Any between you would recommend? Aeschylus, Hesiod? No, go straight to the Odyssey. Constance says, Steve, what if a vigilante does a poor job of choosing a target? No end of Americans with bad decision-making skills. Right. That's the most effective argument. Of course, Luigi Mangione did not do a poor job. He picked someone who richly deserved to die. But yeah, the most effective argument against what he did is, well, what if somebody has poor decision-making skills, as you put it? That absolutely right. That gives me pause, obviously. The Big Shep says Luigi didn't do a poor job, right? Well, he did a poor job of everything else. He could be a free man right now. Would have been fairly easy to do. It would have been fairly easy not to get caught for that crime. He just made one mistake after another, or he intended it. Alex Hardy says, so if not Lewis, who are some of the best historians of the Middle East? That's not really a chat question. There's lots and lots of them, lots and lots of different aspects. Steve Abramstein says, when you mentioned creepy crying and screams at Gacy's house, you shuffled around, creating a static, scary movie type of noise. You're starting to inadvertently produce high-tech programming. It's a detail that won't come out in most John Wayne Gacy documentaries or whatnot, which is that he did not soundproof his house. It wasn't just the detail that you'll always get with Gacy is that everyone who walked into his house, including his wife and stepchildren, noticed a ghastly odor. All the time, people did. There's only one person connected with the case who says that I was there at the time and I didn't notice anything. Everyone else noticed a ghastly odor, and that's usually the only thing you hear. But if you sift through the police reports on the affidavits and whatnot, a number of people commented on hearing weird noises coming out of that house. Weird noises made by someone other than Gacy. Cries, yells, that the neighbors mostly wrote off as fights, just arguments, loud arguments. To this day, knowing what neighborhoods are like, especially suburban neighborhoods, to this day, I do not believe. I think about this neighborhood, which is as quiet as a tomb. But if I heard, or anybody heard, loud arguments at 2 and 3 in the morning over and over again in one particular house, there would be somebody, I guarantee you, who would just be stuck at the crick in the curtain watching that property. And they would see that a young guy came in at 1 in the morning and did not leave ever again. They would see that. I can't believe that didn't happen in Gacy's case. But anyway, Tolstoy 111 says Christopher Nolan will be filming the Odyssey. Let's hope it's not a 3-hour rant about patriarchy and the domestic oppression of Penelope and her enslaved people. I don't hold out any hope for it whatsoever. It will be about Penelope. Colin says, all I want for America is to have a single payer system. You're not going to get it. So I want other things. Emma Miles is here. Not exactly book related, but your motivational rants about self-control have helped me recently as I've begun preparing for the LSAT. My reading comprehension is stronger than my logical reasoning. Well, that could be improved. SM30, will you review Wind and Truth? No. AKA says, I was watching your Western Canon playlist, came across, those are from 8 years ago, and came across a video on the first time you showed Frida on camera. Yes, Yes, famously, she is in one of the Western Canada starter kits as a tiny little nugget. And thought it was so sweet seeing your first reactions to her 7 years ago. Yeah, right, right. She bit my nose on camera. It's just a tiny little mouse. That was her second day here. If you look carefully, you'll see my very old, very sick pointer, Malin, dying at that point, on the couch next to me. With not noticing, trying not to pay attention to this little dog. Manny says the only thing is that Luigi himself doesn't exactly seem like the model social activist. That's the thing I like about it, is that he doesn't seem that way. Steven Bronstein says, what do you think of Steve Schmidt? And do you feel warned? I have conflicting thoughts. Steve Schmidt's content, the words on paper that he says, the written version of what he says, is accurate. Some of the only accurate renditions that you will get. But he himself obviously has. I have to work hard to separate the content from the delivery, because he's obviously got some. I wish that he would pay someone to read his scripts, I guess is the nicest thing to say. Michael Lombardo says, has your Hollywood contact sent you any Oscar nominees? No. I'm told that there's a batch of screeners that she's just been meaning to send me and hasn't done that. So I'll get a whole bunch of stuff upcoming. I've been mostly sinking my time into reading. I'm not sure how much of it I would watch anyway. Watching that Dahmer thing on Netflix was a significant outlay of time to watch. And watching it reminded me of how bad most productions are, whether they're straight to cable or whether they're movies, how bad they all are. So I'm not overly motivated. Cosmic Gaze says, what is the oldest book you own in terms of its publication date? Also, are there books you have refused to purchase because they are too old? The oldest book that I own in terms of publication date is from the 16th century, and I don't have it here. I have it across town in a safe deposit box. No, I would never not, like at the Brattle in the sale lot. If I would never not buy a book because of how old it is. It would be a question of it's the shape it's in. Can I read it? Dylan says, why is it so rare to come across a university press title in stores? Is this corner of the net such a small portion of the reading public? University presses titles are hit or miss, but the hits are joys. I agree. They just don't do it. They have a high price tag. The price is not on the book. Their subject matters are often complex, sometimes abstruse. Retail bookstores are governed by book talk. They don't want titles like that. AKA says, Steve, after reading Crime and Punishment and now reading War and Peace, it's really struck me how much admiration the young Russian men had for Napoleon, the leader of their enemies. Why, Napoleon just is stuck on your mind, isn't he? Adam Miller says, as far as what was missed, I think it's just your matter-of-factness, the insane amount of confidence in your knowledge of literature, even if you're wrong about Stephen King. I'm not wrong about Stephen King. What you were badly missed? I don't know. And I can't ask, because if I ask, it looks like I'm fishing for compliments. But I don't know. It goes hand in hand with the age-old question on this channel of why anyone watches, which I've long since given up on getting an answer to. Steve Bronstein says, have you seen J.L. Cavan's impression of Trump and others? They're really fun and clever, provide relief from frustration and disbelief. I have not. Anti-Guy says, Steve, do you think this will get to the point where people will be prosecuted for not informing on their migrant neighbors, just like in East Germany? Yes. And also warrantless house searches. If you're an American, especially an American in a proud, don't mess with me, stand your ground state like Maine or Vermont or Texas, and you think there's no goddamn way, think otherwise. Warrantless house searches, pounding on the door. Just take a minute. Got nothing to hide. You got nothing to worry about. You object, you get in the unmarked van, and no one hears from you again. Michael Lombardo says, I think the sweater Luigi Chuck Mangione was wearing at the bail hearing sold out within hours at Nordstrom. Street Medic says, I think you were missed because you don't sugarcoat your opinions. You're loud and loud. I assume that means, and boisterous, and that's refreshing. Well, I hope so. I hope so. I don't sugarcoat my opinions. Although I don't sugarcoat my opinions, but ask anyone who's been here. I'm actually sweet. I'm actually sweet. Uh, Indy says you were missed because many people don't like or loathe the people who avoid giving their honest opinions. They seem insincere because they are insincere. And I could not disagree with you more on. And then I don't know what you disagree with me on because your comment stops there. But it's like I was saying, there is a whole class of YouTubers and some booktubers who exclusively do not want to offend and who are willing to censor themselves. Look, just watch a video. Watch how many videos you get. Somebody who has 65 subscribers who is making a fool of them, a goddamn fool of themselves by saying things like unalive. Because I am so interested in the 60 cents a year that I would get if I monetized this channel that even now, 3 years before I can qualify for that 60 cents a year, I'm still willing to tell YouTube that I'll censor myself. You don't have to do it. Look, I'm a good boy. I'll say the stupid word unalive. I'll say it over and over again. I'll say SA instead of sexual assault. Anyway, Tolstoy 111 says in 1975, Harlan Ellison had a trigger warning put on his book Deathbird Stories, but that was pure marketing to make it seem alluring. It was ironic. It wasn't that he thought readers were delicate. AKA says, wait, I have just hit a Has Steve read that's actually applicable with Andy Kirchhoff's books. I'm feeling giddy with this victory over my dude bro king. It's not a victory. It's not a victory. Dylan says, I think your presence was missed in part that you are a stern but friendly presence on our screens. Not only do you tolerate fools, but you help us cease being fools. Oh my. Oh, come now. No one. That is way too much credit to me. Thank you, but that's way too nice. J. Scott Phillips says, speaking of poetry, are we going back to Poetry Thursday from that anthology you were working through, or will you switch to that New Yorker volume? Well, I won't switch to the New Yorker volume. I might go back to that other one. It's the other one, the modern American poetry. I could go back to it, but it seems like, that would be all of 2025, and what would that be? If I went to that anthology, what would that be? In a month, we would hit 1959. In a month, we would hit the poem that ended poetry as a serious literary genre. And after that's only a month away. That's just a few pages away in the book. After that, the rest of the year would be me ragging on absolute crap week after week after week. I don't know. Max says, if nowhere is safe from the grasp of America, where even move? Oh, do you mean why even move? The grass will be lighter elsewhere. The grass will be, of course, at its strongest here. So if you were to emigrate to Portugal or Holland or whatnot, it's unlikely that you would have warrantless door-pounding house searches. Just step aside, let us do our job. You got nothing to hide, you got nothing to worry about. You object, you go in the van. That's going to happen this year in America. And it's going to become a common feature. And it's never going to stop because there isn't going to be any electoral accountability. And most Americans don't believe that. Absolutely that's not true. And when I ask them, okay, if you don't believe that's true, then tell me a reason that would stop it from being true. A reason that isn't respect for norms or institutional memory or anything like that. Nothing intangible. Show me something that would stop that from happening. And they can't do it. Of course, it's just my opinion. I could be wrong. I'm not Nostradamus. But if you lived in Antigua or Holland or Sweden, that hand would not be as heavy on you. That's the reason to leave. Christina says, hi all. I've been away from Booktube and reading for a year, but I'm back. Oh, good. Feels so good to be back. I've missed you all. It's a wonderful community. I don't mean that. I'm not being silly either. It's a wonderful community. It was the idea of the community that brought me back. Colin says, is Gene Kernan's autobiography, The Last Man on the Moon, worth reading? Now, Steve Bronstein says, just check The Rise and Fall on Amazon, and it was available on Kindle for free. Rise and fall of what? What are we talking about here? Context. I would clap my hands together, but my hand has once again been commandeered. It's not pressing against her nose now. Now she's just holding it, so I'm not allowed to move it. Uh, uh, Michael Lombardo says, has the new Onyx Stone book crossed your reading stack? That's not a have you read question. Far from it. No, it has not. I would not read it. No point. There's no point. Danger Kid. My first time catching a Stevestream live as one of the crazy people that discovered and subbed to your channel last December. Your almost endless back catalog has tided me over during your hiatus. I love the name, Danger Kid. Street Medic. I once treated a celebrity who I won't name, who referred to himself in the third person the entire time we were transporting. Cosmic Abe says, what are some of your biggest pet peeves when it comes to written biographies? In the 21st century, the lack of a bibliography. None of them have bibliographies. You have not finished your book. You have not written a complete book if you don't have a bibliography. I don't care what the fad is. But also, my main pet peeve of any and in any century, in any decade, is whether or not an exhaustive biographer forgets to tell a story. Your research, the amount of your research, means almost nothing compared to whether or not you are keeping me interested. You're not free of that because you spent 10 hours in the Houghton Library. You still have to write an interesting book like this thing. You have to write a book that grips, that the reader wants to read. You don't have to do that. You will get a grant from an academic press, and your book will be cited as a definitive work, whether you do or not. But you've failed. If you've written a boring book, you've written a bad book. Tolstoy 111 says, a week from Friday will be the 50th anniversary of the death of P.G. Wodehouse. I've never read him, and there's a good reason to do so. You've never read P.G. Wodehouse at all? Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, that would be a good reason to do so. AKA says, should I watch the recent Shogun series? No. Seems quite interesting. I've not read the book, but I've heard you mention it on the channel before. Yeah, the book. Read the book. The book is wonderful. You should not watch the series. No. Oh no, the chat jumped. Okay, we were at Shogun. We were, oh my god. Hang on. I will get back to you. It was about Shogun. We were on Shogun. There we go. Manny says, would you recommend reading Ovid's Metamorphoses before Homer? Because after having read Ovid, I feel like I can appreciate the parts about the gods a lot more. No, I would recommend reading Homer first. If you're worried about being confused by the gods, study up on Wikipedia or read Edith Hamilton's mythology until you've got the basics. But Ovid read Homer, so you should probably read Homer first. If you've got a choice, and if you feel like it, of course, you're free to do whatever you like. But Ovid read Homer, so you'll get more out of the experience if you read Homer first. Colin says, "What's your favorite silent film?" Don't ever lose that sense of humor. Street Medic says, the thing about ebooks is they can be edited remotely, even if you bought the book, which IMO is right out of 1984. Well, they can be if you keep them in the system where you bought them with the DRM rights right there on them. If you strip the DRM from the file and put it on a thumb drive, no one can edit it. It's as secure as the books on your shelf. Matt Sheridan says, doesn't making films and mine series about Dahmer just glorify a monster? I'm not sure what purpose they serve. No, I don't think so. No, it's well, if you're going to ask what purpose does it serve, what purpose does any drama serve? Right? I mean, Oedipus kills somebody. It's an incredibly dramatic story. And what's his name? Ryan Murphy, is that who did the Dahmer show for Netflix? At times he does a good job with the drama. It's a fascinating story. Dahmer, I think, is more fascinating than any other serial killer. Certainly any of the other major marquee gay serial killers, which apparently is some sort of specialty of mine. Miranda says, do my eyes deceive me? He's back. Yes, your eyes do not deceive you. I am back. And so is the bean. who has grabbed onto one of my hands and will not let me go. So, let's see here. DZ Giant says, is it wrong that I like the Hobbit movie trilogy? I mean, it's not Lord of the Rings, of course, but it's not that bad. Yes, it is. It's incredibly bad. Rodency says, Steve, is Humphrey's translation of Metamorphoses one of the better ones? I didn't think so. You might. In this case, all of my incredible amounts of knowledge, my almost inestimable amounts of knowledge, my unbelievable amounts of knowledge don't really matter. You're the one who's going to have to live with the translator. So line up a few with the Metamorphoses. You have tons to choose from, and see who you like best. Colombian Thunder says, I would have left the country, but there are too many people I know here that I don't want to leave behind who aren't Trump supporters. There has been a lot of drama about some family members voting. Well, okay, you're going to leave them behind anyway. What are you going to do for them if you don't leave them behind? You're going to leave them behind anyway. Rodency says, is responding to someone else. Colombian Thunder says, which has been very depressing to deal with, especially with how lost they are to Trump idolatry. I can imagine. I think about that all the time. I don't really worry about, when I've lost a lot of people in my life, and some of them I can think, they would have been a Trump supporter, definitely. And I'd have lost them in a worse way than having them die. It's worse than having them die because they're still alive. They're just insane. They've just been taken over. But even retrospectively, I don't worry about Mi Sainted Ma. I really don't think. I think she would have had no patience with any of it. So, Stephen Bronstein says, what do you think of Trump's lifting of security protections for Bolton, Pompeo, and others? It's pretty transparent. He wants them to die. He wants that to occur in the news sometime this month. And for Anthony Fauci, it certainly will. Fauci or General Milley, one of these people is going to die in February or March because they didn't have a security detail, because one of the armed seditionist felons that Trump pardoned got to them. The two go hand in hand. He freed the people that he wants to kill, the people whose security details he removed. He wants that to happen. And it will. I don't see how that won't happen. And there'll be hand wringing, and the fascist press will ask a couple of Trump cult members in Congress, do you agree with this or not? They won't condemn it. Let's see here. Brian Constantine says, will we see the serial killer project you're working on or is it confidential? I'm not currently at the moment working on it. That is still hovering I did my job. I filed by the end of last year, and the check did not bounce. But I don't think the patron is quite done. I would hate to think that serial killers are still in my future for 2025. I would hate to think that. But as to whether or not you'll see it, I think in some transmuted form you will. Definitely. You'll see the Habsburgs first, but you'll see it. I think you will. I just don't know what form it will be in. It's not currently my job to decide the form. Maybe it will be. Tolstoy 111 is responding to someone else. Brian says, any thoughts on why serial killers seem to have become so rare after being numerous in the 80s, 90s or so? I think the technology has finally caught up with them. There are cameras everywhere. There's tracking everywhere. And thanks in part to a raising of social consciousness, the typical American serial killer, I mean, there are 10 or 11 serial killers at large right now, people that are still forensically racking up bodies. But there were two keys to being if we're going to use the term, a successful serial killer in the time period that you're talking about. One was to choose your victims from a social group that people would not miss. Runaways, gay sex workers just in general. Choose your victims from a section of society where there won't be a huge amount of social pressure to get the murders solved. And again, you think the most famous case here being John Wayne Gacy, who preyed effortlessly on young men and boys until he killed the all-American kid. Until I hate to say it because it's wrong to kill anyone, but except the healthcare CEO, I guess. But until he killed the wrong kid, until he killed a kid whose parents were incredibly up in arms within an hour, who were nonstop campaigning, who there were no question marks about the boy at all. There was no question that he was a runaway or a drug addict or trouble at all. He would not have disappeared. In other words, if he disappeared, something had to have happened to him. If Gacy hadn't done that, if he'd stuck to red light district, rent boys, who knows how long he would have gone on. One factor is you have to pick your victims from a vulnerable pool, and there are fewer vulnerable pools. I know that the government of the United States right now is trying to make vulnerable pools. They're trying to make an open season on anybody who's not a white male evangelical Christian. But even so, our social consciousness has been raised. No one thinks of normal caring people no longer have as many blind spots as they once did. So that if, let's say, you name the group, name the disaffected group. If 4 members of such a group went missing in a short amount of time, there'd be a lot more social response than there was in earlier decades. That's one thing that you need to be a successful serial killer. And the other thing that you need is a way to dispose of the bodies, which any murder mystery author will tell you going back 100 years. You could dig up Agatha Christie and ask her, what's the most difficult thing about a murder mystery? She'll say, getting rid of the body. That's the most difficult thing, not killing someone. It's a minute's work to kill someone. It's getting rid of the body. And you see all the different ways that if we're talking about gay serial killers, all the different ways that they do it are far more vulnerable to detection now than they were then. Dahmer, he got rid of the bodies by dissecting them and then destroying them piece by piece, little bit by little bit, vivisection. But that part he would still have been able to do, but his apartment building would have cameras on it now. Dean Corll, another perfect example. He had a boathouse, had a boat shed, or just a storage facility that gave off, after he'd buried 4 bodies out there, it gave off an unearthly odor. It would have security cameras. Now that there was a whole row of warehouses, that whole row of warehouses would have security cameras. It would have people watching that footage on a regular basis. There'd be no way that he could drag in a human-shaped tarpaulin and come out without it. There'd be no way that he could do that. Again, probably the most notorious thing would be John Wayne Gacy. He actually got disposed of the bodies in the crawl space under his house. So he would have been the hardest to catch. But I think that's why it's dropped off, is that forensics has caught up with these monsters. So that I think there's a really good reason why the vast majority of serial killers in America who are still at large, nothing's known about them or not much, kill along major highways. They pretty much have to. The days of a trapdoor spider like the Gilgo Beach guy, those days have to be coming to an end. None of us has that kind of privacy anymore. Anyway, Dylan says, to link yesterday's topic to today's, what do you think of the conspiracy theory that the reason Luigi got caught is because of the AI facial recognition program the government used to track people? It's nonsense, of course. It's police work that tracked him, and his own stupidity or his own desire to get caught. He could easily have left the country, and he didn't do it. So he could easily have disposed of the evidence. He didn't do that either. Let's see here. Rodency is responding to someone else. David says, are you still active on Patreon? Well, I've never known what it means to be active on Patreon. I have a core group of Patreon supporters. I love them. Absolutely love them. But I don't do anything for Patreon exclusively. And I never have. So I never know quite what being active on Patreon means. I I I think for neatness sake, I really should make a video where I just say, I don't know how many of my supporters on Patreon. I have a tiny handful of supporters on Patreon. I don't know how many of them watch my videos, but I really ought to make a video saying, if you still want the people who support me on Patreon, almost to a person, I contacted and said, I'm not going to do anything extra here. I'm making 5 videos a day. All of my writing, almost all of it is free. I'm available for you to email or call. You can come over for wine and calzones, but there aren't going to be any bonus tiers on Patreon. And to a person, the people who support me over there said, I know. It feels right. You have enriched my reading life so much that it feels right for me to chip in $5 a month. I, I think I ought to make a video in which I say, if you feel that way, why don't you cancel the Patreon and just do Steve Reads Substack, my Steve Reads blog, where there you are getting something. I don't know though. I don't know what it means to be active. I've never been active on Patreon. Uh, uh, let's see here. Indy says, who is going to say who deserves to die if not a court? According to your logic, I don't see why any number of vigilantes wouldn't feel justified in killing people they and others deem evil. It's the mistaken killings that are the haunting factor there. The thing that's overriding it in my own mind is that the victim here deserved it. And that the killer is not a killer. He's not a bad guy. He's not evil. He's not wrong. He's not hearing voices. He's not a danger to anybody. That combination is the killer combination there. No pun intended. Kelsey says, another longtime viewer but infrequent commenter here. Just wanted to say it's great to see you back. Why, thank you. AKA says, I cannot picture Tom Holland, Steve's absolute favorite actor, as Odysseus. Please, are you telling me that Nolan actually did cast Tom Holland as Odysseus? I don't even want to think about it. Street Medic says, have you seen Nosferatu? Yes, I have. I saw it long before anyone else did. I was praising it. I was talking about how it was obsessing me on this channel long before it was out in theaters. Tolstoy 111 says, I've noticed you have little faith in aging writers to be productive. Very little, yeah. So no new William Kennedy novels coming. He just turned 97. No. I've noticed that the people who most often think that you're going to get work like that from a major novel from Robert Silverberg or Caro or William Kennedy are younger. They haven't experienced aging, actual real aging. They haven't experienced that, so they think, well, your hip might give out, but you could still write. Aging wears you down. It dulls you. I mean, I'm almost 30 and I'm feeling it. So, Anti-Gaia says, I'm just not looking forward to having my library purged. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that. Dylan says, book talk baffles me. At Barnes & Noble, I saw a book talk made me do it. Stan, it was all smut, save for A Little Life. No idea why that book caught on there. Well, it's pretty smutty. But I know that I get called a horrible, reductus, old fuddy-duddy when I say it, but I think book talk is incredibly, corrosively bad. Just awful. It's just awful. And it's not just that they always recommend smut. It's the way they talk about books just in general. That's all just so kabuki theater. It's all just downright weird. Cramerica Industries says, I think I heard you mention in your stream yesterday you did a through hike of the Appalachian Trail. Seemed like all through hikers now have a trail name. Did you have one, and will you share it? I did have one. I will not share it. No. That's another thing. Up until the social media age, you didn't share your trail name outside of that world. But I not only through hiked. I not only did that. There's one step above through hiking that I did a long, long time ago when I was young, when I was younger than 28. I through hiked without Preventer, which is not something most people can say about the Appalachian Trail. Sid says, I think you dropped a hint in your last stream about self-publishing soon. Are we getting your tentacle romance for Valentine's now? No, but I need to consult about self-publishing. That will be happening soon. Let's see here. AKA says, Steve, which was your favorite Arabic country to visit during your travels? Oh my. I liked a lot of them for different reasons. I'm not sure that I have a single favorite. Where would it be? I'm thinking of different people, different places, different houses. I don't know that I have a single favorite. Just that stands out about all the others. I'm not sure that I'd be able to say that about European countries either. Street Medic says, are there any defunct bookstores you miss? Oh my God, how much time do you have? Yeah, there are a lot of defunct bookstores that I miss. A lot of them. Retail and secondhand. A lot. Dylan says, there have already been U.S. citizens unjustly searched and detained, which is a really unpleasant glimpse of what's to come, especially given the obvious racism. What with the targeting of the Navajo? Yeah, but the bulk of America, the bulk of the people in America who are looking at this complacently in the fascist mainstream media are content with the fact that it's racism because they think that means it doesn't apply to them. And that's not true. And again, the parallels with the first 2 years of Nazi Germany are so exact that only the names are different. Ordinary Burgermeister Germans thought, well, I might not approve of this, but at least it's not going to affect me. And they were wrong. People when a country falls to fascism, they always think that way, and they are always wrong. Erasmus says, it annoys me when people compare Trump to Grover Cleveland just because they both had non-consecutive terms. There are no historical parallels to Trump. It's just sane washing another way. Yeah, it was one of the reasons I don't watch mainstream media. Joshua Crebo is here. Crebo is here. Hello, Steve. So glad you are back. Yes, you and I will have to do a video again. Steve Ronstein says, did you see a lady on CNN told Scott Jennings, who was downplaying Elon's salute, to do the salute himself on air? I did see, wasn't watching the show, but that was clipped everywhere, and I did see that. Yeah. And he didn't, and people won't. And when they do, they immediately lose everything, which is at least a kind of sane counternote to these times. Is when, a civil servant crazy lady does it for social media, she is fired instantly. When another woman does it on social media, she's fired from her job instantly, has to retire from all of social media. Her life is ruined. When a priest does it, he's defrocked and delicensed immediately. I have to confess, the gaslighting by one of the women that did it on camera for social media got to me the most. That bothered me the most, where her implication with that stupid smug look on her face was that all of us, have always said, my heart goes out to you, by making a Nazi salute. Always. We've always done this. So all those Hallmark specials, all those old cartoons, all those old advertisements from the 40s and 50s and 60s, that's why they're so full of people making Nazi salutes. Just maddening. That kind of just Trump is my God gaslighting. I can tell you what reality not only is, but always has been. Manny says, which poem is that? No idea what that's about. Street Medic says, will you participate in Epic Comic Wednesday this week? I don't know. I should email Mike and ask what's going on with that. Maybe he doesn't want me back. Dylan says, the self-censoring like unalived is very annoying, but replacing rape with the word grape actively angers me. It's disrespectful to the victims. All of it is. I saw a channel with 65 subscribers going out of his way to say the stupid goddamn word unalived, to signal to his betters, to his feudal overlords, I am a good boy. You won't even need to tell me to curtail my own language. I'll do it myself. I'm that eager for 60 cents a year. Just disgusting. Just absolutely disgusting. Miranda says, sorry if this has been previously discussed and answered elsewhere, but I'd like to know which publications you think are worth the money for the book reviews and maybe news. Obviously, TLS. What else? Well, London Review of Books, the New York Review of Books. For current release book reviews, there's always Open Letters Review. It's free, won't cost you a penny. It's really good. Hannah's Books is here. I asked a young friend about Unalive recently, and he said it is all about avoiding censorship and rejection by the algorithm. Right. Utterly ridiculous. Utterly craven. I will willingly do this. I don't even need you to penalize me. I'll willingly talk like a goddamn fool uh, ahead of time so as not to hurt a potential money stream down the line. Uh, Dylan McMahon says, Hannah, that's true, but I am a social worker and have heard co-workers say unalive instead of suicide. DZJN is trying to street medic. Hannah's book says, regarding bibliographies, not necessarily the writer forgetting to put one together, often the axed by the publishers, much to the writer's horror. The writer's not a hostage. This isn't the raid on Entebbe. The writer's not a hostage. Okay, fine. The author might want to shell out for a bibliography and have it not be in the budget for the book or whatnot, but the author's not a hostage. I have yet to see an author go online anywhere on social media and say, I wanted a bibliography in this thing and it didn't get it, or criticize their publisher. Or my only concern is the book in front of me that I'm reviewing. The book in front of me that I'm reviewing should have ample bibliography, ample notes, and ample annotations. And if it doesn't have that and it purports to be a real biography, then I'm going to excoriate it. Street Medic says algorithms just make propaganda easier. Oh boy, you said a mouthful. They do. It would be great if they included antonyms to counter the confirmation bias they create. AKA says, when you read epic poetry, do you read it aloud? No. And if so, how long, for example, does a reading of the Iliad take you? I don't read epic poetry out loud. Lydia Joy says, speaking of trigger warnings, rolls my eyes at those notes at the beginning of my movies for mature audiences: violence, sex, mayhem, smoking. When did we start needing warnings about smoking? I mentioned that I relatively recently watched the Netflix drama series, multi-part drama series about Jeffrey Dahmer. I had lots and lots of complaints about that series, but it had those content warnings. That exact same thing. And I'm thinking, yeah, okay, Luke Evans smokes all throughout this series. But Jeffrey Dahmer, the character that he's portraying, also kills and dismembers people. so, uh, Jason says, is the stock market going to crash tomorrow due to the tariffs? If the market does indeed crash and Trump does not change course, it is a sign we are doomed here in Canada. I don't know if the market will crash. I have no idea. Every one of the people playing the market, all the people who are involved in whether or not it will crash, all have to go home at night. They all have a driveway. They all have a front door. No one wants MAGA. No one wants Stuart Rhodes on their doorstep. No one wants the Proud Boys on their doorstep with baseball bats. No one wants, a packet attached to the bottom of their car for the next morning when they sent to work. I don't know what will happen. But if the stock market doesn't open 1,000 points down tomorrow, it will certainly happen. Trade war with your steadfast allies is just a bad idea. That's all there is to it. Street Medic says his initials are SA. Good luck trying to figure it out. Joshua Crebo says, do you like the Golding translation of Office Metamorphoses? Yes, of course I do. I don't just like it. I love it. That is something I would consider reading out loud. Danger Kid says, thoughts on Cadellus's various Byzantine histories? No. Oh, you're new to the channel, I think you said. I love him. I've been praising him for years on this channel, and years before there was a channel. I picked up a few as part of a background research for a project I'm working on. Was afraid I would find them dull, but it's been the exact opposite. No, they're great. He is the modern historian of Byzantine Rome that Byzantine Rome has always needed. He's fantastic. I can't recommend him highly enough. Cosmic Gaze says Trump's percent of the vote going up in the 2024 election in the Northeast in general, and Massachusetts especially, honestly baffles me. It baffled me too, until the day before his inauguration when he admitted that Elon Musk rigged the election for him. I just said it out loud. I did great. I had landslides in these states. Thank you, Elon. Because now I'm willing to believe that. Of course, you can't say it. It's absolutely verboten to say that the 2024 election was stolen. But a tech genius with an absolute legion of tech guys bought the candidate, and then suddenly the candidate wins the popular approval that he never come close to having before. it did baffle me until Trump admitted that thanks to that Elon Musk rigged the election for him. If he's willing to say that out loud, then I'm willing to take him at his word. AKA says, Steve, what was the final push for you to go vegan? I asked because the suffering I'm causing for so many animals has been weighing on me, even recently causing bad dreams. I'm considering veganism. Try it tomorrow. What's the harm in trying it tomorrow? There'll be a thing whose taste you will miss, and you can still have that taste for special occasions if you want. But daily, fix yourself a beautiful salad. Fix yourself a gigantic bowl of rice and season it any way you like. Easiest thing to do in the world, a gigantic bowl of rice, a bowl of rice that will fill you for the rest of the day. Takes 5 minutes to do. No one's dying. No one with a sense of humor. No one with a family. No one who knows it's coming. No, nothing like that. Tater tots, potatoes just in general, mega stuffed Oreos, completely vegan. If it's intruding on your dreams, then try it tomorrow. Start tomorrow. If it's intruding on your dreams, that's serious. That means you should at least try it. If you fail, then you fail. But it is so easy to do. Try it tomorrow. Try going all day tomorrow without having any meat products. Have a big bowl of rice. Have a bowl of cereal with water instead of milk. Be weird the first time, won't be weird the second time. Anyway, random reading pathways. Welcome back, Steve. Your back catalog guided me well on some recent book hunts. Thank you. Here's hoping you made some progress writing Aw Dog while you've been away. No, no, I didn't. Manny says, I hope this question is not too broad, but are there any books on the Great Northern War you would recommend? No. Jeffrey Clark says, a recommendation of the novel that I found I enjoyed a lot was The Scarlet Mansion by Alan Eckert. It's a historical fiction novel about H.H. Holmes. Yeah, I'm not going far back as H.H. Holmes. Thankfully, I'm not doing that. Street Medic says, I can't see most people downloading ebooks to thumb drives. Well, but it's possible to do. You get an ebook, strip it of any kind of digital rights management that would allow any other person to affect that file. That you do not need to be a tech head to do that. It takes 5 minutes. And then that file is yours. So you put that file on your reading device, put that file on another reading device, and then put that file also on a thumb drive that is not even connected to a device. That book is yours. As surely as the book's on your shelf, that book is yours. AKA says, Steve, who is your favorite film, Dracula? And why is it Christopher Lee? It is not Christopher Lee. Oh, the chat jumped. Oh, God, help us. Oh, there we go. Manny says, I agree with you that Luigi didn't do anything wrong, but I can't help but think of him as some kind of Raskolnikov type character. Raskolnikov was nuts. Luigi Mangione is not nuts. I don't know when or if he'll ever speak to the American public, but he's not crazy. He killed somebody, but he's not crazy. Cosmic Gaze says, Steve, have you read about Lawrence Bittaker, one of the toolbox murderers? Unfortunately, yes. His crimes are some of the most harrowing and disturbing I've read in terms of serial killers. Yeah, a bit. He was not one of my focuses, but yeah. Hannah's responding to Gandhi. AKA says, Steve, can we get some more Bro Watch videos from you? They're always so much fun. I actually thought about doing a Bro Watch video of what's his name. Oh my God, what is his name? His first name is Warren. Tall, skinny, young kid, massive tobacco addict. He was just on Joe Rogan, and it hugely catapulted his profile. Oh my God, what is his name? Here, hang on just a second. I know that I can get to it. Warren is his first name. Smith, Warren Smith. I was just tempted to do a Bro Watch on him, and then a channel called Daniel Gilbert, who I think has like 1,000 subscribers, something like that, did a great video tearing Warren Smith apart. He did what I would do. He wasn't as funny as I was, but who is? But he had all the tech stuff and the clips and whatnot, which I wouldn't have had. I was just about to do that when he struck first. So, but I will have to do a bro watch or more than one this year. Perhaps I'll start with The Active Mind. That's a good place to start. Tolstoy 111, but surely 96-year-old Cynthia Ozick has more treats in store for us, right? The point I was trying to make is that you don't feel like it anymore. You don't, the fire goes away. There's writing, and then there's what critics nebulously refer to as late style, which is usually a euphemism for you're getting tired and your critics have loved you, or you've been really popular or really important. So they don't want to say that. I will say that, but most critics don't want to say that. So they use this term late style. And then for most writers who are lucky enough to get old, there's a period after that where there's nothing. Even late style goes away. It becomes a bit of a trial to get through the day. You're not thinking about writing. Let's see here. Steve Bronski says Rise and Fall of the Third Reich was free on Amazon Prime. Just a PSA. Was it really? Oh my. Goodness gracious. Is it still? I have a copy, but I'll have to check and see. I don't even know if I know how to look for books on Amazon Prime. AKA says, is there a particular... Steve Bronstein, will you email me about that? Email me with foolproof guide on how to find that. I'd love to add that. AKA says, is there a particular Seinfeld episode that really sticks out for you? For me, it's the opposite, where George joins the Yankees front office. Love the marine biologist one as well. Well, the marine biologist bit, the climax of the marine biologist episode is classic. C was angry that day, my friend, like an old man trying to send back soup at a deli. But for me, I mean, there's so many great episodes, but for me, the best Seinfeld episode, there are bits that are classic. Elaine dancing, for instance, or a war. What is it good for? But for me, the whole episode that works the best, that is the best, is Bizarro Jerry, where Elaine meets bizarro versions of Jerry and George and Kramer, who are nice and who like to read and go to the library. And they meet at the end, and you're tempted the whole episode. Obviously, you're tempted the whole episode to think this is some sort of bizarro reflection of Jerry's world, but you're also being encouraged to think this is just New York. 6 million people live here. You can find people like this, until the very end, when Bizarro Jerry says, "Me so happy, me could cry." And then it's explicitly Bizarro. Anyway, SM30, how do you choose which books to review? I would say that I review everything, but I don't, of course. I don't review everything. There are only so many books. I'd like to review one book a day in February. I missed today, so I have to double up tomorrow. I would say that just at whatever crosses my bow, but that's not true. It's a weird combination. It's worth a Steve Reads entry, trying to parse that out. It's a weird combination, especially since I control my own venue. It's different when you don't, right? I've worked at venues many, many times where I was basically an in-house reviewer, but I didn't control things. I had to put a schedule together and pitch it, put it before my editor, say, here's why I'm picking this, here's what the balance is here. I don't have to do that now with either Big Canoe News in Northern Georgia or Steve Reads or especially Open Letters Review. I don't have to do that. I can set my own schedule. So the question of how to pick things, well, in any month, there are going to be books that are major. That's just the way of it. There just are. Like this thing. This is maybe not the poetry volume, but this thing is major. It's a major thing that's appearing. Or when this thing appeared, you knew that this was major. You knew this was was going to be one of the year's major biographies. So you're gonna do that, definitely. Then I want to balance that out with books that are of interest to me that no one is ever going to see in a bookstore and that maybe no one else is interested in. Like, for instance, there's a book coming out in late February about how birds sleep. It's an academic press, of course. I loved it. Thought it was absolutely fascinating. I will write a review of it, and my review of it will be interesting. But I don't expect that it has a large audience. I'm just doing it because I want to. And lots of other factors too. That's an excellent question. Brian Constantine says, I've heard of TikTok's even worse. Videos about crime have to use euphemisms for just about all the violence to avoid demonetization. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Sid says, I read the Gilead Quartet last month and really liked it. Which one did you like the most? Gilead was my favorite. I think she effortlessly outdid McCarthy in the father-son theme and everything else. Yeah, she easily outdoes McCarthy in his own field. Gilead's probably my favorite too. Rodency says, a Harvard linguist is having a book called Algo Speak, publishing in June, which will touch on and explicate this insane devolution. Dylan says, TikTok has had a huge impact on the spoken English, mostly for the worst, but there will at least be a very interesting book about it one day. We'll see. AKA says, recently read and enjoyed 100 Years of Solitude and was wondering what you thought of it. Also, the Netflix adaptation, any good? Never saw the Netflix adaptation. I'm not as big a fan of the book as everybody else is. Street Medic says, oh, no. Have you ever gone to a restaurant and listened to the third grade conversations going on the tables around you? Let's face it, if there is a huge percentage of the population that's just stupid, sometimes I've done that, not often, if I can avoid it. Deep in the Read says, what do you think of Mary Wollstonecraft? I want to read essays on social progress and activism. Thought she might be a good writer to start with. Yeah, I would say so. Tolstoy 111 says, as a vegan, do you also abstain from honey? The relationship between bees and their keepers is consensual. They can leave if he doesn't keep the hive clean. I don't like honey. Street Medic says, wild rice, not white rice. Street Medic says, or just eat cereal dry, straight from the box. Andy Guy says, you don't need cow milk. I like almond milk on my rice checks. You definitely don't need cow milk. You definitely don't. That's true. Let's see here. Street Medic says, humans are the only mammals I know of that consume milk after they are weaned. Anti-Guy is also recommending oat milk. Dylan says, Warren Smith, Eric Weinstein, Curtis Yarvin, they're all such sententious dorks. How does anyone take these people seriously? Listening to them for more than 5 minutes gives me a migraine. I honestly don't know how people take them seriously. I think it's easier to take Brett Weinstein seriously. Eric Weinstein, I don't know how anybody takes him seriously. It's obvious how brittle an egomaniac he is. His brother can simulate importance for much longer stretches. It doesn't quite surprise me as much how he could fool people. Tolstoy 111 says, the ability to write music is notorious for fading with age. That's probably why Sibelius stopped in his mid-60s. Aaron Copland said it was as if someone turned off a fountain. But I, for one, look forward to new Ipcris adventures from a 95-year-old Len Dayton. Matt Sheridan says, I love the episode where George gets Steinbrenner addicted to calzones. Matt Sheridan says, no soup for you. Right, the no soup for you is ironically one of the most famous bits in Seinfeld that never did anything for me. I don't think it's funny. There's so many other bits that do, but not that one. The most famous one. Street Medic says, I still have a copy of How to Listen to Music by Aaron Copland. Anti-Guy says, do you recommend The Creation of Anne Boleyn by Susan Bordeaux? I very much do. Very much. Street Medic says, my grandmother taught music and was a very good pianist. AKA says, the dentist orgy in Seinfeld is another hilarious moment that sticks out. Joshua Creepo says, in your much mourned absence, oh, you didn't need to mourn me, Pookie. I'm back. We can email all the time. And you can come over here for wine and calzones. Or if you're old enough to have wine. I don't know if you are. Maybe you're not. I went through some of your older videos and watched your science fiction short story anthology video. Very Best of the Best by Gardner Dozois is now on my Kindle. There are some fantastic stories in there. Fantastic stories. AKA says, what's your favorite special edition publishing line for classics like the Penguin Deluxe editions or Everyman Library? It'd be Penguin Deluxe. At least it was. I'd have to see what Penguin Deluxe is. Penguin Deluxe still being published? I'd have to see what they pick. But it'd be Penguin Deluxe. Joshua Creepo's back. I would love to make another video with you, Steve. We should make another video. Holly and Hollyhock says, so comforting to nod off to wake up to you. So glad you're back. Isn't that nice? Cosmic A says, you want to hear a joke? People who think Art of the Deal was not ghostwritten. I know. Danger Kid is back. Thoughts on Dahlgren? I love it. It's brilliant. Not for everybody, though. I read it for the first time last year. Can't decide if it was genius or just self-indulgent nonsense. I quite like Delaney's other SF, but this one was a different animal. It is a different animal, but it's not just self-indulgent nonsense. It is brilliant. Takes 2 or 3 reads. Dylan says, my favorite George bit from Seinfeld is in the episode where he's sent to Cuba to scout a player, and they do the scolding by the boss routine, only with Castro in the place of his boss. I always laugh. AKA says, do you like the Master and Margarita, Talking Cat, and the Devil? Seems like a great combination. I'm definitely interested in reading it. I don't particularly like it. No, don't tell Zach at the Brattle, but I don't particularly. Rodensy says, who is your favorite Argentinian writer? I like them all. Tolstoy 111, every man is great, but they have used some awful public domain translations. AKA says, do you think Jane Austen is the greatest novelist ever? No. Must read more says, I woke up this morning thinking about the episode where Jerry dated the Romanian gymnast and Kramer had the kidney stone. There's so many bits. There's so many great bits scattered all throughout the show's history. That you get started and you start thinking about them, about all the ones about Poppy destroying the couch or man hands. anyway, Rodensy says, seen The Brutalist? No. And AKA says, how many films do you watch each year on average? No idea. I don't watch films. I don't go to theaters. The last time I went to a theater, somebody took a phone call in the audience and just talked in normal conversational volume. People were telling her, shush, be quiet. We paid $20 to watch the movie. She didn't care. People stopped the kid who was walking up and down the aisles and said, could you eject her? Didn't do anything. And so I stopped going on a dime. Then we'll never go back to a movie theater. So I only see things as electronic screeners on my laptop. And I don't know how many of those I do. It's all blurred anyway, because some of it is series and not individual movies. Although I did watch Dahmer on Netflix, like a normal person. I just watched it on Netflix. Dylan says, Steve, what are your thoughts now on James by Percival Everett? I liked it a lot initially, but now I am not as hot on it as I was at first. I am conflicted about it. It's brilliant. Obviously, it's brilliant, but what is it saying? My thoughts won't fit in a chat, but I have lots of thoughts about it, about what it's trying to say. What is it trying to say? If you make Black people in the South in the time period, if you make them into a race of super intellects who are carefully hiding themselves from the oblivious white people who are enslaving them, then what are you saying about all the white abolitionists and also all the Black slaves who worked and struggled and risked their lives to get an education? I've lots and lots of things, lots of thoughts on something that not fit for a chat. AKA says, oh my God, Poppy on the Couch is a classic. Yes. Matt Sheridan says, wasn't Brett Weinstein the guy some college kids were yelling at? I'm pretty sure that was his claim to fame at first. Well, that was 15 years ago. So yeah, you wouldn't know that detail unless you knew a lot of other details. Cosmic Gaze says, is The Holdovers worth seeing? No. Rodensy says, what do you think of The Holdovers if you saw it? Period. Boston representation, bookish Paul Giamatti in that curmudgeonly mentor role. I didn't like it. I didn't like it for a lot of specific reasons. Anodyne says the bird flew right into her head, like he couldn't avoid it. Jason Wisnick says, are you a baseball fan? There are rumors to that effect, but I deny them. AKA says, Poppy showing up the second time during the couch theft episode is hilarious. Rodensy says, is responding to Cosmic Gaze. AKA says, what was your initial reaction to the Seinfeld finale? I really loved it. It was quite the shock, but in a good way for me. I thought it was, wasn't happy with it. To me, it struck me as pretty pandering. I wanted something a little bit cleverer than that for something they knew was coming a year away. Uh, AK says, speaking of the holdovers, when they passed the Brattle, I instantly thought of you, Steve. Yes, the Terror Billy says, what? You're back? You made my day. Yes, but I'm leaving. We're wrapping up the Stevestream. Matt Sheridan says, the holdovers was such a meh movie. I wanted to like it. I did too, but I didn't like it. Odie says, Steve, I need to know how long The Wheel of Time took you to read. I read the books as they were coming out. So however long that took, I read them as they were coming out. I never missed one. Rodensy says, I love Winnie the Pooh. Matt Sheridan says, I must get back to The Great Gatsby. Good night to you, Steve, and to all the ships at sea. AK says, did you like Dead Poet Society? No, I didn't. Deep in the Reed says, regarding movie theaters, I heard the CEO of a major movie chain responding to people singing and screaming in Wicked, showing that it's just the way things are now, and theaters won't do anything. Now, last time I went, the theater did nothing. One person in the middle of the theater was ruining the experience for probably 25 people around her. And those people had three choices. They could do the normal thing, the right thing, and ask the management, in the form of the kid going up and down the aisle, to eject her from the theater, tell her to leave. The second thing would be if everybody else left. Just, I'm not going to stick around. I don't want to hear this phone conversation. The movie's already been ruined. I've been taken out of it. Or the third thing, the Luigi Mangione thing, where 2 or 3 people in the audience take the woman on the phone, one on the left arm, one on the right arm, physically lift her out of her chair and throw her out of the theater. One of those 3 things, I didn't want to see any of it again, so I would never go back. AK says, have you seen Enora? I really enjoyed it. I have not seen it. Anti-Guy says, Dead Poet Society is a total dude bro movie. Dylan McMahon says, one time I asked someone next to me in a movie theater to stop texting, and they screamed at me, yes, if you just ask nicely. Just incredible how people can't turn their phones off for 2 hours. Rodensy says, we do not have these repugnant issues with decorum in the cinemas here in the UK. We have them here, definitely. Jason says, how important is your Irish heritage to you? It's not important to me in the ways that people who venerate their heritage tend to make it. I think it's a very interesting story, but not important in that way. AKA says, I know you're not a Dickens fan, but if you had to pick a favorite of his novels, which would it be? My favorite is A Tale of Two Cities, but that does nobody any good because it's not typical. It's not a typical Dickens novel, so that it. I don't have one. I need to confront Dickens this year again, for the last time this year again. But anyway, that is the end of the chat. So I'm going to wrap this up because we've been on here for 2 hours and 30 minutes. That's a long time. It's been wonderful, absolutely wonderful. But we need to. I need to wrap this up and get back to work because it is 9:30 here in Boston. So I've got what? I can't do math. 2.5 hours until I start to read. That's time enough to get a lot of stuff done. So I'm going to wrap this up, but we are going to be back tomorrow. So save all your thoughts for then. But we do have to wrap up this live stream. Thank you all for being here. And I will see you all tomorrow, I hope, for the next Stevestream. We will see.